Hi, it's Katrina. We have explored less than 5% of our oceans, and that means that some of the craziest stuff on the planet is still hidden under miles of water. Today, I've gathered some of the most mind-blowing underwater discoveries into one ultimate deep-sea expedition. Let's head into the abyss.
No records exist of this sunken civilization. A civilization nobody has ever heard about may be lost off the coast of Mexico. A discovery made more than 2 decades ago revealed a secret so dangerous that it's been banished to a massive government warehouse filled with countless identical crates, just like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not really, but kind of close. Since this discovery 20 years ago, no one has really mentioned it. This mysterious civilization might be connected to the Maya or the ancient people of Cuba. Or perhaps they were a distinctly unique population living on a land bridge that connected Mexico to Cuba. A little more than 20 years ago, in 2000, marine engineer Pauline Zalitsky and her husband Paul Weinsweig were working for the Cuban government on a survey mission of the deep sea looking for Spanish ships, and probably treasure. Their company, Advanced Digital Communications, was one of 4 working in a joint venture with President Fidel Castro's government to explore Cuban waters using sonar equipment. Suddenly, they noticed something shocking. Their sonar had picked up some strange shapes, but they weren't ships. They were symmetrical and geometric stone structures resembling an urban complex. These were ruins. Paul and Pauline found large stone structures and what looked like gateways, temples, pyramids, houses, all the things you would expect from an ancient civilization. In July 2001, the company returned with geologist Manuel Iturralde, senior researcher of Cuba's Natural History Museum, this time with an ROV. The images showed what looked like huge blocks of stone, some stacked on top of each other. While it did look like a lost city, Pauline didn't want to draw any conclusions without more evidence, but the media went wild. The headlines were everywhere. Atlantis discovered in Cuba, and Lost City of the Caribbean revealed on the ocean floor. They definitely captured everyone's imagination, but the problem was that they were too deep. Governments, museums, and historical societies made promises to investigate the strange sonar images. And then there was silence. The researchers were not really happy with people claiming it was Atlantis. It was probably more likely a real ancient city made by the ancestors of the people in the area, not a myth. The geologist Iturralde said that there are local legends of the Maya and native Yucatecos that tell of an island inhabited by their ancestors that vanished beneath the waves. So maybe not Atlantis, but perhaps something similar. When you look at Cuba and Mexico on a map, they look like they could almost touch. The western tip of Cuba and the city of Cancun are not very far from one another. Tens of thousands of years ago, scientists think they could have potentially been connected. Scientists have said that if there is a sunken civilization between Mexico and Cuba, they must have sunk 50,000 years ago. That would mean the civilization predates Egypt by nearly 45,000 years. The proof might be hidden in secret underwater caves. The Yucatan Peninsula is riddled with tunnels and caverns going back thousands of years. Many of the ancient caves and tunnels are now filled with water, submerged after all this time, just like the mysterious city allegedly found by Pauline in 2001. The tunnels underground and underwater could all be part of a huge sunken city, accessible through huge cave gateways mistaken for natural features. The problem with the idea of this sunken city is that it is too deep to have been built above water. During the Ice Age, the land would not have been high enough for someone to build the city, unless it was above ground, and then suddenly was destroyed and lost beneath the waves in some extreme cataclysmic event. The strangest part is there have been no follow-up investigations. Since it was dismissed so quickly, some people wonder whether the information was maybe suppressed by the Cuban government. Maybe they are using it as some mysterious underwater base. I don't know. But the question remains, was there really a 50,000-year-old lost civilization? Let me know what you think in the comments. A cave for pirates and thieves. In Illinois, there is a cave that might look innocent now, but it was actually home to pirates. Even though there aren't any pirates these days on the Ohio River laying siege to merchants and travelers, there sure used to be, and they used to hang out in this cave. If you've ever visited Cave in Rock, you'll understand the allure this place must have had for cutthroats and thieves. There was gambling, murder, and general villainy. Its entrance is 55 feet wide, making it look like a gaping hole in the side of a sheer rock cliff. It's the perfect place for a giant to hibernate for the winter. This cave was initially explored by a French adventurer in 1739, and after that it became a popular hiding place for rogues and bandits. In 1790, river pirates moved in. They would ambush flatboats that were carrying cargo downstream, and for years the cave was like the most rootin' saloon of the Wild West. The first known serial killers in America, the Harp brothers, are said to have hidden in the cave. Jesse James and his gang supposedly sought sanctuary under the dripping ceiling as well. Once news spread of the ambush spot, people would steer clear of it or be more careful while passing by, but for years they couldn't get the pirates out. It took a while, but after 9 years, the rambunctious river pirates would eventually be chased out of the area. In 1799, a group of vigilantes called the Exterminators came and raided the place. The fun and games were over. By the middle of the 1800s, the cave had been transformed into a church. Then a small village was established nearby. The village took the same name as the cave, calling itself Cave in Rock. Today it is a state park, and you can go and pretend to be a pirate yourself. The First Sorcerers. What scientists just found in an Australian cave is being hailed as revolutionary. Researchers think they have uncovered the oldest known example of humans practicing sorcery. This sorcery may be the oldest known ritual that was transferred from one group to another in a cultural exchange. A new study has shown that the Australian cave was home to sorcerers long before Egypt existed, long before Mesopotamia, even before Noah's flood. This place is antediluvian, closer in time to the biblical Nephilim than the Roman Empire. The sorcerer's ritual was practiced by the Aboriginal people in the cave from the time of the Ice Age, when mammoths were still alive, up until colonial times. The archaeological finds in the cave are 12,000 years old. The physical evidence corroborates oral accounts of Aboriginal magical practices that were recorded in the 19th century. What it all means is that the mysterious ritual began in this cave during the Ice Age. Then it persisted throughout Australia up until Europeans arrived. When Europeans were introduced to the local culture, they recorded Aboriginals performing this very specific ritual. Okay, I know you're dying to hear what the ritual actually is. The ritual involved the victim's hair being tied to the end of a stick, which was smeared in kangaroo fat and then thrown into a fire. But what is the point of this stick ritual? What kinds of sorceries were being practiced by Australia's Aboriginals? According to the oral tradition of the Aboriginal people, they performed all manner of mystical ceremonies to heal the sick or to curse their enemies. The stick ritual was one of great evil and malice. To bring harm to a person, an ancient sorcerer would obtain a piece of their victim, either a scrap of their clothing or some strands of their hair. Then they would affix the hair or cloth to a stick. The stick would already be smeared either in kangaroo fat or human fat. This fat-smeared stick with human hair wrapped around it was known as a mula mulung. Then the stick was jammed upright into the ground beside a small fire. The sorcerer chanted the name of their intended victim, sometimes for hours, until the stick fell sideways into the flames. Once the stick caught fire, the spell of doom was cast, and the victim's misfortune was imminent. Whatever you do, please don't try this at home. Evidence of the ritual was found in Clogg's Cave in southeastern Australia. It's a place where archaeologists have already found evidence of human activity going back 25,000 years. Tina Mann, an archaeologist at the University of Queensland, had an amazing reaction to the study's results. She said their first reaction was, wow. It's only one word, but it says a lot. The ritual with the human hair and the fire could be even older than the evidence suggests. Way older. Archaeologists think Clogg's Cave was used as a den of sorcery starting at least 23,000 years ago. They have previously found ceremonial arrangements of stone. Researchers have discovered broken stalactites, traces of calcite powder, and smashed quartz crystals. Everything points to magic being performed in this cavern since the dawn of humanity. It's just that the kangaroo ritual is the only one researchers have been able to 100% verify. They verified the ritual by digging up an actual stick that had been part of it. Radiocarbon dating showed that the stick was 12,000 years old. But that's only one stick. There could be others buried in the cavern that researchers still haven't found. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a huge thank you to Country Boy and Simon Rainbow for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. John's Cave of the Apocalypse. Imagine a place where the most terrifying prophecies of the Bible were born. That would be a pretty scary place. The Cave of the Apocalypse sounds like one of the most downright frightening places in the world, but it isn't that scary when you visit now. This cave is on one of the most picturesque islands in Europe. Patmos, located in Greece, is a beautiful place, but maybe John took it differently. This was where St. John wrote the Bible's most terrifying chapters about revelation and doom. The Cave of the Apocalypse is also sometimes known as the Holy Grotto. It's surprisingly small for such an important cave. It's shallow, hardly more than 15 feet wide and 20 feet deep, yet you get a real sense of lost history just from looking into the cave. According to tradition, St. John made the cavern his home after he was exiled to the island by Roman Emperor Domitian. I know a lot of us wouldn't mind being exiled to such a gorgeous island, but in biblical times, it was a real bummer. A lot of people were banished from the Roman Empire during the 1st century. Not just John. He was sent to Patmos with others who claimed to have the power of prophecy. Anyone who was caught practicing magic or astrology could be sent to a random island, where they were expected to waste away until their dying day. Anyone who tried to speak their prophecy was immediately exiled. The Romans didn't care about who was doing it, be they Christian or Jewish. They only cared about the prophecy itself, which terrified them. The Romans saw prophecies as a threat to their lasting power. During his years on the island, living hand-to-mouth in the shallow cave, John wrote the Book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. John wasn't alone in his cave. He had God's company and the company of his disciple Prochorus. John slept on a flat stone and used a rock as a pillow. He heard the voice of God come to him from a fissure in the cavern's wall, and it was this voice that inspired his vision. Those of you familiar with the Bible know exactly which vision I'm talking about. John saw a glimpse of the last days of humanity. He saw the destruction of Earth and the creation of new Earth. After God banished the sinners to oblivion, defeated Satan, and resurrected the faithful, a new holy city of Jerusalem descended from heaven. Did you know that John didn't write the apocalypse himself? He dictated his revelation to his disciple, and Prochorus wrote down the actual words. These days, the Cave of the Apocalypse is sheltered inside of a white-walled sanctuary. It is considered one of the most sacred sites of Christianity. The oldest artwork in the world. Scientists have found the oldest artwork in the world, and it is pretty amazing. Can you guess what the oldest artwork shows? On the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, inside a dark and humid cave, is the image of, drumroll please. If you guessed a hunting scene, you're 100% correct. The oldest known piece of art is of 3 people gathered around a large red pig. That must have been very tasty. Archaeologist Maxime Albert from Australia's Griffith University said it's the oldest evidence of storytelling anyone's ever found. Maxime was part of the scientific community that identified the previous record holder for oldest artwork. Before the picture of the hunters and the large red pig, the oldest cave art ever found was, that's right, also of a pig. It was 45,500 years old. The latest discovery in Liang Karampuang Cave is 51,200 years old. That is a huge age gap, 5,700 years apart. There are other paintings inside the cave, but archaeologists can't figure out what they depict. The images are in terrible condition, but Maxime said it's likely just a matter of time before they find artwork that is even older. A big question historians are trying to answer is why narrative artwork appears to have originated in Indonesia when human beings came from Africa. Did humans spread out of Africa first and then individual groups came up with the concept of art later? When did art really begin? Let me know your thoughts. The secret caves under the castle. A 14th century historic castle has revealed a startling discovery, a hidden tunnel that may have been used by prehistoric humans. But who were they, and what were they hiding? You may have never even heard of this castle before, although if you've seen a lot of these videos, then you probably have. It's located in southern Poland, and its name is Olsztyn Castle. Historians think it was built as a fortress for guarding the way into southern Poland, likely by King Casimir the Great, more than 600 years ago. Casimir the Great is famous for his chain of 25 castles. He's also famous for being the last Polish king of the Piast dynasty, ruling from 1333 to 1370. His 25 castles were erected between the cities of Kraków and Częstochowa as a barrier against would-be invaders. The string of castles was known as the Trail of the Eagle's Nests. It's worth mentioning that Casimir the Great also founded one of the oldest universities on the planet. He founded the Jagiellonian University in 1364. Olsztyn Castle was only one of 25 fortifications that the king built before his untimely death, which, by the way, came from a hunting injury in 1370. Throughout the castle's history, it came under siege a handful of times. It was brutally attacked once in the 15th century and then captured by the Swedes in 1655. After the Swedes got their hands on the castle, it was brought to ruin. When archaeologists with the Nature and Man Foundation started studying a mysterious cave revealed in the lower castle, they realized they'd hit the jackpot. It seems Casimir the Great built his castle above a shelter that had been used by prehistoric non-humans. When I say non-humans, I mean Neanderthals. The ancient cavern was used by the close cousins of Homo sapiens, likely more than 40,000 years ago. Archaeologists haven't dated the ancient shelter, so it could be even older. This is all just guesswork right now. The leader of the excavation, Dr. Urbanowski, said there could be even more tunnels leading to other caves even deeper beneath the castle. Their work has shown the existence of a gigantic void way below where the Neanderthals had their cave. Unfortunately, scientists haven't been able to get to it yet. Nobody knows if the caves were involved in the construction of the castle. It's unclear if King Casimir III knew he was building the fortress on top of a Neanderthal hideout. No one has any idea how all of this is connected. Any ideas? Prehistoric treasures in New Zealand. Is New Zealand one of your bucket list travel destinations? If not, it definitely should be. New Zealand is a land riddled with caves, caverns, and the bones of prehistoric monsters. Nobody knows this better than Anne Jago. Anne visited New Zealand almost 6 decades ago as a member of the English women's cricket team. She fell in love with the country and ended up meeting her husband on the trip, a local farmer. They had 3 children together and lived happily out in the countryside. I'm telling you about Anne because when she first arrived in New Zealand, she didn't know about giant penguins, extinct moa birds like miniature tyrannosaurs, or slimy giant snails. But she knows about them now. Her 3 children grew up playing in a subterranean minefield of beast bones. Anne's life in New Zealand is like a constant adventure. She lives on a farm in Waitomo in the King Country. She and her family live amidst hectares of wild bush on top of lumpy chunks of limestone. Underneath this fantasy landscape is a world of underground twists and turns. The district is named after Waitomo Cave, which was first explored in 1887 by an English surveyor named Fred Mace. The cave is connected to countless others through a network of echoing and dripping limestone corridors. It's a place filled with the lights of glowworms stuck to the ceiling like nightlights. The underground tunnels were explored by Anne's children as they grew up. It wasn't uncommon for the kids to stumble upon the bones of extinct moa birds, the remnants even bigger than themselves. The children found the skeletons of kakapo, a currently critically endangered parrot, and they camped tucked behind stalagmites and sheltered beneath the pointy stalactites on the ceiling. Doesn't that sound like the coolest way to grow up? Exploring caverns untouched by humans, containing only the remains of strange, long-dead monsters? London's underground, below the underground. Something is always buried on top of something even older. In 2017, a report was published by Land Registry Data in the UK. The report claimed that there are somewhere around 3 million miles of creepy underground tunnels and telecommunication lines hidden underneath the streets of London. Many of these secret tunnels were supposedly constructed by 3 large organizations: the Post Office, British Telecom, and the Ministry of Defense. They seem to be in cahoots. The truth behind the caverns and corridors beneath London gets foggier as the years go on. The tunnel systems originated around the time of the Cold War, but the government authorities have remained extra conspicuous about them. Many have still never been publicly acknowledged. One of the more famous secret tunnels is at the very heart of the city underneath 57 Whitehall. It's known as the Postmaster General's Tunnel because it was built to protect sensitive communication machinery in the case of an atom bomb falling. The bunker has an entrance into the old War Office that was used by Winston Churchill himself. I wonder if Churchill ever got scared down there. Probably not. The Postmaster General's Tunnel is little more than a foyer leading to a much vaster underground network. The network emerges in various government buildings and telephone exchanges. Many of the vaulted chambers were built as government air raid shelters during World War II. None of this might be news to you, so let's talk about the tunnels beneath the tunnels. Chislehurst Caves has a history going back at least 12,000 years. This ancient cave network underneath London was home to prehistoric humans when the British Isles were still mostly covered in ice. Some are man-made, but most of them are natural. The caves and their intersecting tunnels cover an area of about 22 miles. In 1903, nobody knew who had made the caves or how old they were. Vice President William Nichols of the British Archaeological Association said they were made by the Druids. William was probably wrong. The earliest evidence of humans using the caves for their own means comes from a 9th century charter written by the Saxons. They were using the caves to produce quicklime. In 1737, the caves were used for producing chalk. In 10,000 BC, no one knows what the caves were used for. Presumably, the Ice Age humans were using it to get out of the cold and the snow. There is still so much to be learned in the depths under London. For such a rich and modern city, it's incredible to see just how deep its roots really go. There are also tons of ghost stories involving London's underground. Let me tell you one really quick, just to give you an idea of how creepy these tunnels are. Londoners sought refuge in the underground's depths during World War II. Bethnal Green, a station on the Central Line, was one of the deepest. In 1943, as sirens wailed and gunfire echoed, people rushed to the shelter. The panic led to a tragic stampede on the narrow stairs. Many women and children were crushed and suffocated. Tragically, the sirens were just part of a practice drill. The disaster could have been prevented, saving 173 lives. Some believe that the victims' cries can still be heard today. Escape from Hannibal. Italy's cave of Cusa is a little different from the other caves I've talked about today. It was a quarry used by the ancient Greeks up until they were chased out of the area by Hannibal and his army. Not Hannibal Lecter, and not Hannibal either, the legendary general who fought the Romans. This was Hannibal Mago, who waged war against the Greeks in 409 BC. His arrival in Italy ruined operations at the cave of Cusa. Before Hannibal and his Carthaginian forces showed up, the quarry had been operational for 150 years. Almost the entirety of the nearby Greek city of Selinunte was built from the limestone extracted from these deep pits. The cave of Cusa shows just how scared the laborers were of the incoming army. They were so desperate to escape that they abandoned their tools and ran away. The tools were found by modern archaeologists just lying in the dust. The workers must not have known that Hannibal was en route. They were working, chiseling, and suddenly on the horizon was an army. Someone must have warned them, and they flung their chisels and hammers onto the ground and fled in fear. Today, the archaeological site is a grim reminder of the attack. There are still columns of limestone partially chiseled that were never transported to their final destination. The underground pits are still waiting for the workers to come back. Let me tell you a little bit more about what Hannibal was doing in Italy. The political situation was complex during this era. It seemed like everyone had beef with each other. In 480 BC, the Carthaginians were crushed in Sicily when they tried to take Himera. After a few failed campaigns, Carthage backed off. Carthage remained in North Africa, keeping their distance from Greek affairs in Sicily for 70 years. As they licked their wounds, Greek culture continued to spread around the Mediterranean. Tyrants in Sicily were slowly replaced by democracies and oligarchies. Athens sent fleets to Sicily throughout the 420s to keep the peace. Hannibal Mago was sent by the Carthaginian Senate to destroy the city of Selinunte in 410. This was when the cave of Cusa was abandoned and the nearby city obliterated. Hannibal could have gone back to Carthage as a hero, but he kept marching deeper into Sicily, hoping to avenge the defeat of his people 70 years earlier, a defeat which his grandfather had been at the forefront of. Hannibal sought vengeance against the Greeks. After he destroyed the city of Himera in the name of his defeated grandfather, he sacrificed 3,000 Greek prisoners as a brutal act of revenge. Hannibal also flattened the temples in the city and enslaved the surviving women and children. The Greeks never even retaliated. Almost all of Sicily was under the control of Carthage by 405 BC. The cave of Cusa is one of the few surviving reminders of this violent time in European history. A nameless culture in Malaysia. Archaeologists just discovered 3 major clues in a Malaysian cave. They found skeletons from 16,000 years ago and crystals and stone tools, but they don't know yet what these discoveries mean. It all began with the preparation for a new hydroelectric reservoir. Before the reservoir could be fully prepped, archaeologists went in to investigate the mysterious cave system. They ended up finding dozens of prehistoric burials. The ancient caves are in a pretty remote spot, about 135 miles from the major city of Kuala Lumpur. They are all about to be underwater. The reservoir is set to be flooded in 2027, creating a monster lake about 20 square miles. The lake will be used to feed the hydroelectric power station. Before the flood, archaeologists need to solve this ancient mystery. Experts from the National University of Malaysia said the skeletons are likely from a pre-Neolithic culture. Others have already tried to identify them as an unknown branch of the Hoabinhian culture. Here's where things get very exciting. The Hoabinhian lived all the way from mainland China to the jungles of Indonesia. Scientists have been able to group the culture together based on the distinctive stone tools they left behind. The Hoabinhian were one of the earliest cultures in Southeast Asia. They may have been the first people to use wild plants like pepper and beans, which are domesticated in the area right now. The cave dwellers may have been an offshoot of this pre-agricultural society. They were hunter-gatherers who apparently liked to live in dark, dripping rock holes. A total of 16 individuals were found buried inside 13 limestone caves. Things get creepier as we look at how the people were buried. 15 out of the 16 skeletons were buried in a crouched position. They had been put into the ground with their bodies bent almost as if in prayer, which is suggestive of a ritual. We already learned today that there were sorcerers in Australia 23,000 years ago. Could there have been other bizarre rituals held in Malaysia 16,000 years ago? It isn't that much of a stretch to think so. Researchers also found more than 71,000 prehistoric artifacts in the caves, things like pieces of pottery, stone ornaments, and crystals. The crystals were buried with the people as grave goods. Anyone who is burying people, practicing rituals, and leaving their deceased loved ones with gifts must have been culturally advanced. These caves have proved a shocking glimpse into the evolution of Southeast Asian civilizations. It's too bad they're about to be flooded. The twin cave castles of Austrian legend. Nestled in the Austrian Alps, the twin castles of Lug and Scholon are a sight to behold. Perched precariously on the edge of a steep cliff in the Pleschkeitz mountain, these ancient fortresses resemble a place a Disney villain would live. That's the best way I can describe it. The castles dangle 75 feet above the valley floor. Their origins, shrouded in mystery, have sparked countless legends and tales of the supernatural. Most of what's known about these two mysterious castles comes from legend. In one local myth, Chalon Castle was built by a brave knight who eloped with a Saxon princess. They hid in the cavern as the knights slowly built their castle above the valley. In another myth, it's claimed the castle is haunted by a shadowless man. This mystery figure took refuge inside the cave because he was cursed to never have a shadow. He could only leave the cave in the dark of night. He sounds kind of creepy, and honestly, he was. The man with no shadow would creep out from the cave at night and abduct unsuspecting peasant girls. Then he carried them back to the deepest depths of the cave. When the castle was built, the shadowless man continued to haunt its narrow corridors and rock-cut pathways. In reality, historians have very little knowledge of who built either of the Austrian cave castles. There are documents from 1181 that briefly mention Chalon Castle but not Lug Castle. There was a lord of Chalon who was part of some lower, obscure branch of local nobility. By the 16th century, Chalon Castle was a ruin. Its next-door neighbor, Lug Castle, whose origin is just as mysterious, survived a little longer. In the early 19th century, a criminal gang infiltrated the castle and made it their base. Then, before they left, they tore it down brick by brick, leaving it in ruins. Even though the castles are mostly destroyed now, the caves are still very much there, looking like mouths carved into the side of a mountain. Within the caves are labyrinths leading down several hundred feet. As far as we know, we haven't found anything really exciting, at least not yet.
Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Chinese Water Dragon. A giant water monster has been caught on camera in China. A pedestrian standing on a bridge managed to capture a remarkably clear video of an unknown monster slithering through the water. What kind of monster this was remains unknown. However, the evidence overwhelmingly points to the fact that it's certainly something unusual. The footage appears to show a creature like a massive snake moving through the water. It seems to have no visible limbs and kind of looks like the Loch Ness Monster. Those who have seen the footage have even claimed the creature bears a shocking resemblance to Chinese water dragons from legend. Of course, there's always the naysayers who come out to ruin the mystery. Many say it's nothing but a kind of whip kelp, something that can be seen moving through Chinese rivers like a long, slimy snake. Another explanation is that it could be an oarfish, a rarely seen deep-sea fish that normally comes to the surface just before a natural disaster. Yet another theory is that the monster was only a Chinese alligator, historically known as muddy dragons. Many have attributed the entire Eastern dragon mythology to these mysterious Chinese reptiles. But what do you think? Could there really be creatures of legend living in the rivers in China? Let me know your thoughts down below. Number 9. Sleeping Menace. For 400 years, the underwater volcano of Colombo off the coast of Greece has been quietly sleeping. The underwater volcano is close to the Greek island of Santorini, an ancient place that has been home to civilization since before the Egyptian pyramids were built. But the volcano's long slumber has finally come to an end. Scientists have just discovered that it isn't sleeping anymore, and that it could erupt at just about any moment. If that happens, it could trigger a tsunami so big and devastating, it could wipe out entire cities on the Mediterranean coastline. The last time Colombo erupted, 70 people lost their lives. This was back in 1650 AD, when the population was a tiny fraction of what it is today. Since then, Santorini has seen a significant amount of growth, and it's really popular in the summer. If the volcano erupts with the same ferocity as it did 400 years ago, casualties could be much greater this time around. And if it erupts with even more strength than before, the fatalities could be astronomical. But just what exactly did scientists discover? They identified a previously unknown magma chamber deep inside the sunken volcano. What alarmed them was when they noticed that the magma chamber was gradually being filled up. It's filling with magma so quickly that researchers from Imperial College London are focusing on real-time monitoring. According to a geophysicist, the chamber extends about 2 miles below the volcano, and although an eruption is possible, it's not imminent. Still, researchers want everybody to know that the volcano does pose a serious threat. Colombo is a type of highly explosive volcano known for creating huge eruption columns. These columns can be several miles high, shooting an insane amount of volcanic ash into the atmosphere. It's also highly probable that when it does erupt, a tsunami will be triggered, making the entire eruption a worst-case scenario. And now for number 8. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Jackie Edward for the super thanks and for supporting this channel. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more videos like these. Number 8. The HMS Audacious. The HMS Audacious was a dreadnought battleship built for the Royal Navy in the early part of the 20th century. It was completed in 1913 and had a very brief career. The English ship was sunk by a German naval mine while maneuvering around the coast of Ireland during World War I. It was only active for a little over a year. The Audacious was then commissioned on October 15, 1913, and was destroyed on October 27, 1914. When the Audacious hit the underwater mine, it slowly began to flood. Luckily, the majority of British soldiers on board were able to escape with their lives. Only one petty officer died as a result of the ship exploding when a piece of shrapnel hit him. To this day, the HMS Audacious is the biggest warship to ever be sunk by a naval mine. It was so embarrassing for Britain that the Admiralty refused to allow word of its destruction to get out. They didn't want the Germans to know what had happened. It was the History Channel that finally filmed the wreckage of the HMS Audacious for a TV program in 2008. They worked together with nautical archaeologist Ennis McCartney to film the sunken wreckage at a depth of about 223 feet. It still sits 17 miles from Tory Island in the North Atlantic Ocean, with a huge chunk of the ship blown apart from where it hit the mine and exploded. Number 7. A Sunken Civilization. A recent discovery made off the coast of Prince of Wales Island in Alaska has revealed a secret history about the people who used to live there. Scientists say evidence of a sunken civilization supports the theory that the original North American settlers traveled along the shoreline and lived off the sea. A group of Canadian archaeologists helped make the discovery. They found an ancient weir deep underwater in Chacon Bay. The discovery came after the shadow of the long-lost object showed up on sonar images taken over a decade ago. A weir was a type of barrier used by Native Americans to trap fish. These were some of the earliest fish traps ever used and are still utilized today by people across the globe. This particular one was put in place at the end of the Ice Age and has been sitting beneath sea level for thousands of years. Scientists believe that through simple fishing devices like the one found underwater, prehistoric people could have easily lived on Alaska's shoreline. Forget about agriculture to develop civilization. The indigenous people of Alaska likely developed their own civilization simply by harvesting enough fish to feed thousands. The sunken fishing weir is proof of a complex culture living in Alaska, long before civilizations emerged in Mesopotamia. Number 6. Ming the Clam. After spending 507 years in the sea, the oldest creature that ever lived was captured by scientists and killed. The animal was Ming the Clam, an ocean mollusk that was discovered in 2006 off the coast of Iceland. Researchers with Bangor University collected about 200 ocean mollusks off the Icelandic seabed, then took them back to their laboratory for testing. It was part of a larger project focusing on climate change. These seemingly ordinary clams were killed shortly after being captured. Then they were frozen on the research ship for transportation. Nobody thought it was a big deal at the time, and it wasn't until the clams arrived at the university and researchers started studying them that they realized they had just murdered the oldest animal in the world. The thing about mollusks is that scientists know they have an extremely long lifespan, with most of them living to be over a century old. And just like trees, clams add a new ring to their shell every year they're alive. Ming had 410 rings, meaning it was over 4 centuries old when it was captured. Scientists were shocked because they had never seen a clam with so many rings before. They weren't sure how reliable their counting method was, so they put Ming under a microscope. That was when they identified Ming as being approximately 507 years old, born in 1499. It was tragic that the oldest creature on the planet was killed, but scientists are able to make some great breakthroughs in the science of biological aging. Some have even suggested that in the future, studying the remains of Ming could reveal some kind of secret to immortality. Number 5. A Morbid Shipwreck. England's oldest intact shipwreck, a vessel from the 13th century, was recently discovered in the English Channel off the coast of Dorset. On board the ancient ship, archaeologists found a collection of marble stones, some medieval crosses, and rather morbid cargo. The discovery was made by a local charter boat skipper who requested permission to dive the site. Then, scientists from Bournemouth University showed up to do some underwater archaeological excavations. It's not the oldest shipwreck ever found, but it's the earliest shipwreck that still has its hull completely intact. That means the body of the ship is largely undamaged, something that's practically unheard of for a boat that sank 800 years ago. We don't know the name of the ship, only that it dates back to the reign of King Henry III, and that the trees used in the construction were chopped down between 1242 and 1265 AD. It was likely a transport vessel used to bring large shipments from one place to another, particularly used for transporting limestone rock that was coveted by builders in Europe. Marble stones would be quarried in Dorset before being transported to Europe on ships like this one. In this case, though, the ship was carrying a pair of ancient gravestones. The morbid cargo was found perfectly preserved by underwater archaeologists. The gravestones look the same now at the bottom of the ocean as they did in the 13th century when they were made. Unfortunately, the gravestones don't have any names chiseled on them, so we have no idea whose grave they were destined for. Number 4. Ship in the river. Maritime archaeologists have found the broken remains of a cargo ship in a German river. The ship is 400 years old, dating back to the Hanseatic period, when European travel guilds ruled the trading routes in the Baltic Sea and North Sea. Between the 13th and 17th centuries, trade in Northern Europe was highly regulated. There were organized guilds who oversaw the transportation and sale of pretty much all goods in and out of the region. The ship in the river came as a huge surprise, because most vessels that are that ancient don't survive. After being submerged for 400 years, wood typically rots until it becomes indistinguishable from the rest of the sea slime, but scientists think this particular ship may have been sucked into the seafloor and covered in mud immediately after it sank. This preserved it like a mummified boat at the bottom of the River Trave, not far from the city of Lübeck. The ship may have been a galliot or a single-masted cargo ship. Archaeologists from Kiel University in Germany say over 150 barrels have already been found intact around the wreckage site. This indicates the ship was carrying a huge cargo of quicklime when it sank. Quicklime was an ancient ingredient that was needed in the mortar used for building great works of stone. It likely came from Scandinavia, either in Sweden or northern Denmark. Then it was on its way to Germany, where the quicklime would have been used in constructing anything from great cathedrals to medieval tombs. Number 3. Vanilla Vader. Scientists recently discovered an extremely creepy creature in the depths of the ocean. A colossal woodlouse that looks surprisingly like Darth Vader was discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. The disgusting yellow critter is just over 10 inches long, making it 2,500% bigger than the woodlice you typically find in your backyard. The critter is one of several new crustaceans that have been identified in the benthic zone, one of the deepest parts of the ocean. The creature is of the genus Bathynomus, and it shares some disturbing similarities with Darth Vader's helmet from the Star Wars franchise. This new addition to the family has been nicknamed Vanilla Vader because of its pale, milky exterior. It's known only from a single specimen that was found off the coast of Mexico in 2017. Huang Mingqi from the National University of Tainan in Taiwan said the crustacean is evidence of strong ecological diversity in the Gulf of Mexico. The isopod, distantly related to the common woodlouse, lives at a range of about 2,000 to 2,600 feet below sea level, and it's a scavenger, meaning it spends most of its time combing through debris and dirt for something to eat. What do you think? Do you agree with the name? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. A Titanic Discovery. On April 15th, 1912, the Titanic received a warning about dangerous icebergs in the Atlantic Ocean. The SS Mesaba tried to notify the Titanic that there were icebergs on their route and that they needed to be very careful. But unfortunately, the message never reached the bridge. And later that same night, the unsinkable ship sank after hitting an iceberg. The vessel that warned the Titanic continued its existence unscathed for the next 6 years. But during World War I, the Mesaba was blasted to bits by a German submarine. It was hit by a torpedo, ultimately killing 20 people, and afterward, the ship sank to the bottom of the ocean. It suffered the same miserable fate as the Titanic in the end. For a long time, nobody knew the final resting place of the Mesaba, but now researchers from Bournemouth University in the UK have discovered the lost ship sitting at the bottom of the Irish Sea. It was found split almost entirely in half. Scientists used multi-beam sonar to scan the sea floor, identifying over 273 shipwrecks. They illuminated submarines, trawlers, and all kinds of other broken vessels over an area of about 7,500 square miles, and one of these ships ended up being the SS Mesaba. Number 1. The Avro Arrows. The Avro CF-105 Arrow was a sophisticated aircraft engineered by the Canadian air industry during the Cold War of the 1950s. It was a jet interceptor designed specifically to fight against Soviet bombers. But when the budget of the aircraft became an obscene 1 billion Canadian dollars, the project was abandoned. Canada never did become a major producer of military-grade aircraft, with the Avro Arrow being one of their last great endeavors. And in 2017, one of these machines was found at the bottom of Lake Ontario. In the 1950s, Canadians were concerned about a potential attack by Russia through the Canadian Arctic. People were concerned that Soviet troops might try to seize Canada's frozen north. For that reason, many manufacturers began a desperate bid to make more war machines. But because of the expenses, not much ever wound up being done. However, the first Avro Arrow was unveiled in 1957 and broke 4 speed records. It was around this same time that an Avro Arrow wound up at the bottom of Lake Ontario. It's believed the aircraft was launched from the Royal Canadian Air Force Base in Prince Edward County, and by some grave error, it ended up in the lake. After it was found in 2017, experts with the Canada Aviation Museum and the Royal Canadian Air Force helped lift the aircraft to the surface for the first time in over 60 years. Since then, 4 additional Avro Arrow jet interceptors have been discovered abandoned in Canada. The city and the Forbidden Lake. There is a city at the bottom of a lake in China. Deep beneath the surface of Fuxian Lake in China lies a mysterious ancient ruin. Discovered in 2006, the sheer scale of these ruins is shocking. Sonar surveys show that the structures sprawl across millions of square feet. They are huge. Archaeologists believe the city might date back thousands of years, but its origins remain a mystery. Could this be the lost capital of an ancient kingdom? Was it swallowed by the lake in a natural disaster? Or is there another explanation? Chinese authorities have restricted access to the site for regular people, only making this discovery more mysterious. In 2006, a group of divers/aquatic archaeologists were allowed to go investigate the lake and see what was really going on here. The investigative team that dove into the lake initially came across regularly placed stones along the lake bed. These stones were clearly made by someone, not by nature. They were inscribed with strange images and symbols. As the team continued to search through the murky depths, they kept finding more and more pieces of architecture that were obviously built by civilized human beings. This discovery came as a big surprise to archaeologists because nobody had known there was an entire sunken city here. After the dive, the team started looking through historical records and located a place called Duduan. The record said it was established in the area of Fuxian Lake around 206 BC, but that was about it. By the time the Tang Dynasty began, more than 1,000 years later, all mention of Yu Yuan in the historical records was gone. There are no written texts saying what happened to the city. There are only local legends that say the city and its people sank to the bottom of the lake. This is one of those cases where legends might be helpful. Maybe they can combine their dives with the legends and see if anything fits. At first, they thought maybe the sunken city of Yuan had been the capital of the Dian Kingdom more than 2,000 years ago. But as always, there are doubts. For one, the city is ridiculously big. Sonar surveys have shown that the architecture is spread along the bottom of the lake for more than 10.8 million square feet. It's larger than the capital of the ancient Han Dynasty. This sunken complex of ruins is so extensive that it seems to defy all logic. A city this big could not have gone undocumented. It would be as if somehow the city of Rome in ancient times never made it into the history books. It's just not realistic. Things get even more confusing when you learn that there is a submerged pyramid at the bottom of Fushan Lake. Those who are familiar with the structure have claimed it to be more advanced than the Egyptian pyramids. Not because it's bigger, but because its stones are decorated with curious designs and mystical symbols. These blocks with carvings were definitely important, if only we understood what they meant. One of the engraved stones is particularly interesting. On the top right corner of the stone is a small circle. It has 7 lines radiating out of it. The carving looks like the sun. And then on the other side of the stone is a similar circle, but it only has 4 lines radiating out of it. This is very exciting if you're familiar with ancient Chinese symbolism. These types of sun designs have been found drawn on bronze drums from China's spring and autumn period from between 722 and 481 BC. But the stone symbol is far older than that, going back almost 5,000 years. It likely originated with Stone Age cultures in China, cultures who potentially worship the sun. Scientists have been trying to decipher these symbols found all over the lake bed and see if they can find out if they can tell us anything. Could the city really be 5,000 years old? If they aren't that old, they might be at least 1,700 years old, which is also not too shabby. Scientists have no idea. They don't even know what the symbols and carvings mean. They don't know what the pyramid was built for, or if there are some lost Chinese rulers buried underneath it. It's been nearly 20 years since the investigation, and there hasn't been much more information released about it. The rumor going around now is that China shut down Fushan Lake and restricted all archaeological investigations. They have allegedly restricted all diving, period. But why? What are they trying to hide? The legend of Atlantis solved. Scientists believe they have just found the place that started the whole legend of Atlantis. They found a mountain that sank underneath the sea just off the coast of the Canary Islands. If what they say is true, the sunken mountain could have been the beginning of it all. The islands were discovered on a seamount, also known as an underwater mountain. The mountain has 3 inactive volcanoes on it. It's huge, about 31 miles in diameter. I mean, it has to be huge if it has 3 volcanoes surrounded by beaches. Did you know there even were beaches underwater? Scientists led by Luis Somoza, a leading expert in volcanic activity in the Canary Islands, believe they may have stumbled upon the inspiration for the legendary Atlantis. Scientists have even named it Mount Los Atlantes, after the legendary civilization. You know, the one Plato claimed was sent to their watery doom when they defied the gods. What's crazy is just how old Los Atlantes is. Scientists say the mountain would have originally been a series of islands 56 million years ago during the Eocene period. The mountain was so high above sea level that the parts that poked from the surface became tropical isles. For a modern comparison, just look at the Hawaiian Islands. They too were made from volcanic activity. The beaches and palm trees wouldn't exist if not for the volcanoes that also threatened to destroy them. It's a delicate balance between creation and destruction. 34 million years ago, Los Atlantes volcanoes stopped erupting. When that happened, the lava that had been spewing out became dense, and the island started to sink. The whole mountain began to sink very, very slowly. Los Atlantes is still sinking right now. Scientists found some beaches from the ancient islands that are just 200 feet below the surface. During the Ice Age, when sea levels were way lower, the inactive volcanoes would have been islands just as they were 56 million years earlier. The islands would have been home to all kinds of life, and maybe even an advanced civilization of humans.
There was plenty of land, plenty of food, and plenty of opportunity for a pre-flood civilization to prosper. Then, disaster struck at the end of the Ice Age. Sea levels rose just like they did 34 million years ago. The beaches and islands of Los Atlantis were returned to the sea. And sadly, whatever was living on the islands also was forced into the sea. If there had been prehistoric creatures, they would have gone extinct. If there had been a civilization, perhaps like Atlantis, they would have been wiped out. The sea levels rose around the same time Plato claimed Atlantis sank, which was roughly 12,000 years ago. Do you know what else happened 12,000 years ago? It was the same time the ancient astronomers of Göbekli Tepe recorded a comet impact, which may have triggered a global flood. It was the same time the Bible claims God sent a flood to destroy the Nephilim and the corrupted humans. This could explain why every civilization has an ancient flood myth, and perhaps it all began off the coast of the Canary Islands. The oceans are boiling. Scientists have found something extremely alarming 13,000 feet beneath the surface of the ocean. It's a zone full of acidic water, and it's terrifying. It isn't just sort of acidic, it is fatally acidic. The zone's high pressure and low temperature has created conditions so inhospitable to life that the water dissolves shells and skeletons. If you tried to swim through the acidic zone, your skin would melt. Sometimes animals will accidentally swim into it and turn themselves into instant skeletons. I haven't even gotten to the scariest part yet. The scariest part is so frightening that you might be afraid to go swimming after this. Scientists are saying this mysterious acidic zone is getting bigger. A lot bigger. By 2100, it could be so big that it makes up half of the global ocean. Half of all oceans in the world could turn into bubbling pits of acid. What kind of planet will we even be living on if that happens? They'll be like we're on one of Saturn's moons or Venus or something. Life as we know it will cease to exist. Scientists have come up with a name for the zone. It's called the carbonate compensation depth. And in case you were wondering, it is not the same as the ocean acidification that is happening on the surface. As the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from burning of fossil fuels, surface waters are beginning to acidify as well. Scientists have been talking about it for years, but no one realized the same thing was happening deep in the ocean as well. The two things are likely connected. The rise in concentration of carbon dioxide in the ocean is decreasing the pH level. This is helping the deeper areas to become more acidic. To give you an idea of just how much the acidic zone is expanding, it has risen 980 feet in some parts of the Atlantic. If the zone continues to rise, it could occupy 51% of the global ocean. I don't want you to panic, but things are starting to look a little scary in the deep seas. And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time. I want to give a huge thank you to Rose Casanova and Clan Petkov in Bulgaria for supporting this channel. Hi guys! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. A Mississippi Mammoth. A gigantic mammoth tusk was recently found sticking out of a stream in Mississippi. I can't even find words to describe how big the tusk is. The fact that nobody saw it sticking out of the muddy water before is amazing. The tusk was found by someone who desperately wanted to find one. Amateur fossil hunter Eddie Templeton was taking a walk in rural Madison County in early August 2024, exploring the stream. The water had come down quite a bit, and he spotted the tusk right near a cliff. This was a groundbreaking discovery because it is the first time any kind of mammoth fossil has been unearthed in the area, so it's kind of a big deal. If you've ever wondered what to do in case you come across a giant fossil one day, don't just start digging it up. Instead, do what this guy did. Instead of attempting to excavate the tusk himself, he contacted the Mississippi State Geological Survey. With the help of experts, massive tusk was carefully removed from the silt and clay of the stream. According to the survey scientists, the ivory tusk is 7 feet long and weighs 600 pounds. 600 pounds is crazy heavy for one tusk. Imagine how big and strong the animal had to be. It was longer than most human beings are tall, unless you know more 7-foot-tall people than I do. The tusk belonged to a Columbian mammoth, scientific name Mammuthus columbi. While Mississippi was once home to these magnificent creatures, their remains are relatively uncommon.
Most of the fossils are from the more adaptable mastodons. Mastodons were gigantic plant eaters who could graze on pretty much anything. They were very unlike mammoths, who were extremely picky eaters. During the Columbian mammoth's time in North America, from 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, they would only graze in open grasslands. Even though mammoths and mastodons lived in Mississippi, mammoths stuck to a very specific territory. This is why it's so tough to find mammoth remains in Mississippi, whereas mastodon bones are a dime a dozen. By the way, did you know that mammoths arrived in North America the same way as the first humans? Only they did it a little bit earlier. Mammoths crossed the Bering Land Bridge connecting Siberia to Alaska 1.5 years ago. The animals could grow 15 feet tall at the shoulder while weighing upwards of 10 tons. Shortly after humans arrived in North America, taking the same land bridge from Siberia, Columbian mammoths went extinct. Scientists don't think that this was a coincidence. The very last known mammoths survived in small family herds on Russia's Wrangel Island until 3,700 years ago. The legendary London Warship. After spending 360 years at the bottom of England's Thames estuary, a bronze cannon has been seen for the first time since the 1600s. It was discovered by archaeologist Steve Ellis from Historic England. Steve thinks the cannon was part of a 17th century warship, not just any warship. Steve said the cannon came from the London, a warship that played a significant role in England's history. Its name is kind of confusing, but the ship was named the London. The London was built in 1654 at the Chatham Dockyard when England was in political turmoil. The English Civil War had just ended in 1648, and the Anglo-Dutch War had ended earlier in the year. Once the London was ready for service, it was introduced into the convoy that brought Charles II back from his exile in the Netherlands in 1660. Charles was then put back on the English throne. The London may have been a legendary warship, but it didn't have a very long life. In 1665, there was a gunpowder accident. The powder magazine accidentally ignited and the boat exploded. It really exploded. The whole thing went up like a car crash in a Fast and Furious movie. Bits and pieces of it sank into the Thames estuary near Southend Pier. A lot of people died. The explosion was a major catastrophe and a huge humanitarian crisis. 300 crew members were killed, most of them instantly as they were engulfed in the explosion. However, there were a few lucky survivors. 24 men were hit by the initial shockwave with such force that they were blown clear of the explosion and survived. Plus, one woman was saved by the blast. Ever since that fateful day, the ship has lain in two halves on the seabed, its treasures scattered through the silt and sand. The newly found cannon is being hailed as one of the most significant artifacts ever discovered at the wreck. It's a medium-sized demi-cannon, one that historians were able to trace back to its maker, George Brown. The cannon was bigger than a culverin but smaller than the 42-pound cannons on some ships. It would have been placed on the lower gun deck and used to absolutely destroy naval foes with deadly cannonballs. Fingerprints from the Iron Age. Archaeologists have gone full CSI. Divers found a statue at the bottom of a lake that is 3,000 years old. When archaeologists investigated the statue, they found fingerprints on it. Before digging too deeply into the statue, I have to take you back to 1991. That was when divers started to realize there was something going on underneath Italy's Lake Bolsena. Divers started finding piles of stone that looked oddly artificial. Then they started finding wooden poles, ceramic fragments, and evidence of villages. It became clear that humans used to live under the lake. Maybe not under it, but definitely in the lake before it was flooded. In the 9th century BC, Lake Bolsena had a much lower water level. The edges of the lake were populated by towns of Iron Age humans. But the water level kept rising. Archaeologists have found evidence of a civilization on the run. They were primitive settlements that consisted of huts right next to the shore. As the water rose, the huts grew stilts. The villagers wanted to keep living right on the water, but flooding must have become a problem. Their solution was to start building their houses on stilts. Then, when things grew too dire, the people abandoned the lake and their settlements altogether. The statue found at the bottom of the lake was shaped by a member of this forgotten civilization. It has sat unfinished in the water since the 9th century BC. I say unfinished because archaeologists think the clay worker didn't complete their little piece of art. The artist must have gotten frustrated and thrown it into the water. Either that or the figurine was swept away in a flood before the artist could finish all the features. It was intended to be a small statue of a woman, but it's not fully formed. The spectacular part is that the claymaker's fingerprints are still pushed into the clay. It's not too often researchers find the fingerprints of someone who lived in a prehistoric village, and definitely not imprinted on a work of art the person never finished. The Las Vegas of Rome. A team of underwater archaeologists have found a beautiful marble floor in the ruins of an ancient holiday city. The floor is stunning, but it's only a piece of the story. The bigger tale involves the sunken city of Baiae and its fall from grace. For hundreds of years, if you were a wealthy Roman citizen who wanted to let off a bit of steam, you went down to the city of Baiae. Modern historians have called it the Las Vegas of the Roman Empire. It was part seaside resort, part all-inclusive vacation destination. Famous Roman leaders like Cicero, Hadrian, and Julius Caesar spent time in luxury villas here. This place was so rich that its streets were lined with expensive villas. You would have been hard-pressed to find a better, more extravagant city to spend your Roman coins. There was a rejuvenating volcanic hot spring, which people believed to have magical healing properties. Over the years, the hot springs became a little less family-friendly. By the end, they were notorious for their hedonistic offerings. I'm not even going to tell you what the Romans were doing in the hot springs. When the Vegas of Rome was at its peak, the beaches were said to be crowded with people in various states of drunkenness. Famous philosopher Seneca once wrote that Baiae should be avoided with vice and sin. Then it was destroyed. It all began with the fall of the Roman Empire. As Rome grew weaker and weaker, Baiae was attacked by more and more armies. In the 8th century AD, it was utterly destroyed by the invading Muslim armies. The city may have survived as a shadow of its former self into modern times, if not for what happened in the 16th century. Volcanic activity agitated the land Baiae was sitting on. It shuffled around so much that the whole city ended up slipping into the sea. In modern times, archaeologists have been hard at work trying to recover all of the treasure they can. The latest find is the multicolored marble floor I told you about just a minute ago. The floor is currently in the process of being painstakingly restored. The mosaic was made of marble, shell, glass, and mother of pearl. It would have been set into the floor of a reception room in some rich person's villa. I can't tell you how many people with overflowing pockets walked across this floor in ancient times. Who knows? Julius Caesar may have been one of them. Area 51 underwater. There may be secret underwater bases scattered throughout the world that the general public has no idea about. Forget everything you know of Area 51. The real mystery is at the bottom of the sea. There was research done in 1968 that I don't think many people have ever heard about. In that year, the Stanford Research Institute discussed the possibility of underwater bases around the globe. A study also came out called Feasibility of Manned In-Bottom Bases. Researchers proposed locations where bases could be built. They even came up with plans for how to construct these engineering marvels. In the 1960s, T.G. Warfield and L.R. Parkinson in the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics said that building bases on the ocean floor is technically and economically feasible. They came up with an idea to create test facilities. They even priced everything out, supposing it would cost around $500 million over 15 years. Interest in underwater bases never fully went away. In 1987, the Deputy Director of Engineering and Construction for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers brought it up. He called for the creation of secret bases that could be protected deep beneath the ocean. So, do these bases exist? Did the U.S. ever go through with plans to build sunken facilities? In 2014, something very unusual was discovered off the coast of Malibu. Near Point Dume, satellite images revealed a bizarre undersea structure that looked suspiciously like a base. It was such a bizarre phenomenon that local news stations were doing stories on it. Nobody knew if it was a natural geological feature, an alien habitat, or one of the US's top secret facilities. It's been 10 years and the strange structure off the coast of Malibu is still a mystery, only now most people have forgotten about it. By the way, I should mention what China's up to. It was reported in 2016 that China had plans to build a space station, only not in space. 10,000 feet beneath the water in the South China Sea, Beijing was plotting to build a manned underwater base. They would use it to hunt for valuable minerals. But could it also have a strategic military purpose? This is the real deal. China had wanted to do it for a long time, but in 2016, they sped up the project. It was mentioned in the 5-year economic plan that China released. And it was also ranked near the top of China's 100 science and technology priorities. An underwater base is their number 2 priority. Chinese leader Xi Jinping talked about it himself. He said that the deep sea contains treasures, and that in order to obtain the treasures, China needs to control key technologies in deep sea. It's clear as day that China has watery ambitions. But has the project gotten off the ground since it made waves globally in 2016? Nobody has any idea. There hasn't been any word or speculation about an underground base being built in China for almost 10 years. Could they be doing it in secret, or have they given up? The lost shipping stones. 1,500 years ago, a Byzantine merchant ship got a little bit too close to the Sicilian coastline. They were on their way to Syracuse, 25 miles north. But the water was treacherous and they were carrying too much stone. A massive wave lifted the vessel and dropped it onto a reef. The boat smashed to pieces, sending 150 tons of stone sinking to the bottom of the sea. It was a disaster of epic proportions. It was like an Amazon delivery truck crashing and all the packages bursting into flames. Only this was worse. The ship was carrying prefabricated church decorations. It had the columns, capitals, and bases for constructing a church. Churches were big business during the Byzantine Empire. Whoever messed this up likely lost out on future contracts. The stone pieces were never recovered. They remained at the bottom of the Mediterranean for 14 centuries. In 1959, a fisherman hunting cuttlefish saw them for the first time since the Dark Ages. A few years later, German underwater archaeologist Gerhard Kapitan began an investigation of the site. The longest stones are lying across an area about the size of a football field, maybe a little smaller. And they are only under 25 feet of water, meaning they are easy to explore even if you're an amateur diver. After years of research, Gerhard came up with an explanation for the stones. He believed the shipwreck was part of a state-led building campaign launched by Emperor Justinian I. Justinian isn't as famous as Nero or Caligula, but he was a very important figure in history. Today, scholars call him the Last Roman. It's a pretty cool nickname, like the Last Samurai. Justinian ruled during the shift of power from Rome to the new capital of Constantinople. He was the last really Roman-feeling ruler. After him, emperors were distinctly Byzantine. The mysterious shipping stones at the bottom of the sea were likely commissioned to build a new state-funded church as part of Justinian's campaign to build new structures in the capital. This was a theory up until very recently. Stanford University archaeologist Justin Leadweyer recently completed a new study of the shipwrecked stones. Justin doesn't think they had anything to do with Emperor Justinian. But I wonder if archaeologist Justin might have been named after him. Anyway, Justin said that merchants were shipping top-quality decorative stones across the Mediterranean since the Bronze Age. Justin suspects the stones weren't ordered by the emperor himself, but by other people involved in the Byzantines' growing economy of building new stuff. There is a rationale behind Justin's theory. He said that by the time Justinian took power in 527, the Roman Empire had been torn asunder. Its western provinces were cut up and divided amongst the Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Visigoths. The massive trading network that had supplied materials like marble to the far corners of the empire no longer existed. Justinian was trying to recapture parts of the old Roman Empire. His armies went into North Africa, Italy, and some areas of Spain. Part of Justinian's building campaign was to reinforce old fortifications and build new churches in reconquered lands, thereby consolidating the empire. The church aspect was very clever on his part. Justinian wanted to promote his vision of Christianity. By uniting the Byzantine Empire under Christ, Justinian hoped to stitch together the old empire. The tooth of the sea monster in the Titanic? Did you know the average shark loses up to 40,000 teeth during their lifetime? It's true. Any shark will tell you. It's also true for the sharks of prehistory, like everybody's favorite sea monster, the Megalodon. The greatest predator that ever swam the seas lost tens of thousands of teeth during its life. And for that reason, finding a megalodon's tooth isn't particularly rare. They've been found in rivers and streams around the globe, at the beach, in the sand, all over the place. Plenty of people find these big, jagged teeth every year, but never in the deep sea. There has never before been a fossilized megalodon tooth discovered deep in the ocean. And definitely never before in the wreckage of the Titanic. Until now. Move over, old lady from the Titanic with her necklace. The coolest thing ever found at the Titanic now is a necklace made from megalodon teeth. The story behind its discovery is stranger than fiction. Thankfully, for everyone who likes swimming at the beach, the megalodon went extinct between 3 and 4 million years ago. But before that, they dominated the oceans of the world for almost 20 million years. That's a lot of years and a lot of teeth shed. 40,000 per year per shark for 20 million years. You have to think there are likely billions of them on the ocean floor, but you can't just wander around picking them up unless you have some sort of Iron Man suit. That's why most megalodon teeth are found in shallow water or on the shore. So what was a megalodon shark tooth necklace doing in the Titanic? The deep water investigation company known as Magellan formed a digital scan of the Titanic. The scientists at Magellan identified a necklace with a prehistoric shark tooth on it. It's unclear who the necklace belonged to, but it must have been owned by one of the passengers. The underwater scan of the Titanic was the biggest in history. Scientists mapped almost the entirety of the 3-square-mile debris field at the bottom of the ocean. The pieces of the ship, passengers' luggage, everything is strewn across the ocean floor. It looks like somebody flipped the boat upside down and shook everything out of its pockets. This major discovery was in May of 2023. As far as I know, nobody has managed to recover the megalodon necklace from the Titanic. A few months later, in late December, scientists found another megalodon tooth in the deep ocean. But this one wasn't in the Titanic. It was found by a team of deep-sea divers lodged in the seabed about 1.9 miles beneath the ocean. It wasn't in the Atlantic, it was the Pacific. The fossilized megalodon tooth was discovered using an underwater robot known as an ROV, or remotely operated vehicle. The single tooth is stuck in the surface of an underwater mountain. It was like finding a shark tooth on a sunken Everest. Scientists have already dated the enormous tooth at 3.5 million years old.
Mysterious holes. Scientists exploring the depths of the Atlantic Ocean discovered something they couldn't explain. With their fancy equipment, high hopes, and a serious case of curiosity, they suddenly came across a series of holes neatly lined up on the ocean floor. They found these holes at a depth of 2,530 feet. But what on earth could have made them? Did some underwater landscapers forget their tools? Or are they the work of some secretive sea critter? Let's get one thing straight. The ocean is like the final frontier on Earth. We understand more about the moon than we do about the bottom of the ocean. It's a place where pressure can crush you like a bug, and it's cold and dark. Somehow, life finds a way to thrive. But these holes, they've got everyone completely baffled. So what do these holes look like? Imagine a line of small, neat holes, almost if someone took a hole puncher and went to town on the sea floor. The piles of sediment around them suggest that they were excavated by something. But what? During the Voyage to the Ridge 2022 expedition, marine researchers tried to get to the bottom of this mystery. Literally, they took a closer look at the holes and still came up empty-handed. Frustrated but unwilling to give up, they turned to social media for help. They asked internet experts worldwide for their wildest hypotheses. Responses ranged from unknown crab species to gases escaping from the sea floor. One popular theory involves some kind of mysterious marine life. But get this isn't the first time these puzzling holes have been found. In July 2004, similar holes were spotted along the northern mid-Atlantic ridge at a depth of 6,831 feet. Scientists dubbed them Lebensspuren, which apparently is German for life traces. Sounds pretty fancy, right? But it basically means they were just as clueless back then as they are now. So why do these holes matter? Well, they highlight how much we still don't know about the mid-ocean ridge ecosystems. These ecosystems are crucial to our planet's health, and each new discovery helps us understand more about the life and processes that occur there. The holes are like nature's post-it notes, reminding us that there are still plenty of mysteries to solve. So what's next? Scientists will keep exploring and poking around to figure out what is making these holes. Whether they turn out to be gateways to deeper ocean secrets or just the handiwork of a sneaky sea creature, one thing's for sure, the ocean is full of surprises. The underwater city of Cuba. While on a joint Cuban-Canadian expedition in 2001, deep in the waters off the coast of Cuba, researchers picked up something mind-blowing on sonar. They found a city-like structure 2,300 feet below the surface. Some people have speculated that this might be the real-life Atlantis. But is there any truth to their claims? Listen to this, and then let me know what you think in the comments. One theory suggests that it was submerged by a massive tectonic event. Think of it like a giant earthquake that made the city sink. But hold your horse. Experts like Grenville Draper from Florida International University say that's pretty unlikely. According to him, we have never seen anything like that happen. Not even in the Mediterranean, where things get pretty tectonically wild. But if the tectonic event theory doesn't hold water, pun intended, what's left? Could the city have been built underwater by some ancient aquatic architects? Unless ancient humans had gills, that theory is highly unlikely. I had you going there for a second though, didn't I? Unfortunately, we're stuck with the mystery of how this city ended up so deep. To make things even weirder, this isn't the only underwater city out there. Graham Hancock, in his book Underworld: The Mysterious Origins of Civilization, talks about many submerged structures around the world. But most of these are less than 394 feet, which makes sense since sea levels never dropped below that during human history. So what's up with the Cuban city being so much deeper? For a moment, let's entertain another wild theory. What if long ago the Caribbean Sea wasn't a sea at all, but a dry basin? Picture it, a vast expanse of land where now there is only water. Could the Caribbean Sea have been a dry, habitable area during the time of modern humans? If so, ancient people could have built cities there, which later got submerged when the sea formed. The Mediterranean Sea has a similar story. Classical authors like Aristotle, Galileo, and Pliny the Elder describe the birth of the Mediterranean Sea as an enormous flood that came through the Strait of Gibraltar that filled in a dried-out basin. And if it happened there, could it have happened in the Caribbean too? For the Caribbean basin to have been dry, two things needed to happen. First, there had to be a land bridge connecting all the islands, making it a continuous landmass. Second, the region would need to have more evaporation than precipitation, keeping it dry. Today, the Caribbean region does have more evaporation, and it's likely been that way for a long time. So imagine a scenario where the Caribbean was isolated and dry. An earthquake or erosion event could have caused parts of this land bridge to collapse, allowing water from the Atlantic Ocean to rush in and fill the basin. Over time, this would carve deep channels, making the Caribbean Sea as deep as it is today. Now here's a cool twist. The Taino Indians, native to the Caribbean, have a myth about how the sea began. They talk about a great flood that covered their land, which could be a metaphor for this very event. Their land was described as a gourd, which was often dried and used as a container, kind of like a basin. Could this myth be an actual memory of a real event where the Caribbean basin was dry and then flooded? If so, this could explain how a city ended up 2,300 feet underwater. But this, of course, leads to more questions. Are there more sunken cities waiting to be discovered in the Caribbean? Perhaps. Or perhaps this discovery isn't even a real city at all. And now for number 10, but first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Johnny and Matthew Boylan for supporting this channel. Love you guys! If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. Metal spheres. What happens when a Harvard astrophysicist decides to go on a deep-sea treasure hunt? Well, you get a quest for alien artifacts at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, of course. Let's dive into the story of Avi Loeb and his team's mission to uncover what could be the universe's oldest piece of cosmic bling. Who is Avi Loeb? Picture a guy in a lab coat with an Indiana Jones hat, minus the whip. Loeb is an astrophysicist from Harvard University who has been chasing down clues about a mysterious meteor that crashed into the Pacific. Was it just another rock from space? Or was it an alien artifact from a galaxy far, far away? The adventure kicked off in June of 2023 near Papua New Guinea. Loeb and his crew, backed by $1.5 million from entrepreneur Charles Hoskinson, embarked on the research vessel Silver Star. Their mission? To find pieces of a meteor labeled IM-1, which crash-landed in our atmosphere in 2014. It wasn't until 2019 that Loeb and his student Amir Siraj stumbled upon some government data hinting at its extrasolar origin. In 2022, the US Space Command confirmed this, and Loeb was off to the races. So what did they find? Over 700 tiny metal spheres. Now you might think, why is everyone getting so excited over some microscopic balls of metal? These aren't just any metal balls. Preliminary tests suggest that they might be alien artifacts, since they have a composition that is out of this world, literally. Loeb explained in his blog that this discovery is historic because it is the first time that humans have held materials from a large object that came from outside our solar system. Think about it. These little metal bits have traveled farther than any astronaut or Voyager probe. But why is Loeb so convinced these are alien artifacts? For one, the metal spheres have a unique elemental makeup dubbed Belau because of their beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium content. This combination is not something you find in your average meteorite. Was this Loeb's first rodeo with potential alien artifacts? Nope. Back in 2017, he proposed that the Oumuamua comet might be an alien spacecraft using solar energy as a light sail. While that idea got a lot of side-eye from the scientific community, it didn't stop Loeb from keeping his eyes on the stars and the ocean floor. The hunt for IM-1 involved using a magnet-equipped sled to comb the ocean floor. This thing was like the world's biggest and geekiest metal detector, and the team's persistence paid off, leading to the collection of these intriguing spheres. Analysis of these materials is ongoing at various top-tier institutions, including Harvard and UC Berkeley. And Loeb plans to do more treasure hunting. He and his colleagues intend to return to the depths of the Pacific, hoping to find more clues about our interstellar visitors. Interdimensional alien base. There is a city in Mexico that's supposedly protected from hurricanes by an interdimensional base run by aliens. Welcome to Ciudad Madero, where a group of UFO enthusiasts have spread this hard-to-believe rumor. So, who are these stargazers? They belong to the Association of Scientific UFO Research of Tamaulipas, and they are 100% convinced that an underwater alien base named Amupac has shielded their coastal city from hurricanes for over 50 years. Their leader, Juan Carlos Ramon Lopez Diaz, claims that he's even visited this base through astral projection. Yep, that's right, astral projection, just like Doctor Strange. Well, not exactly. Lopez Diaz supposedly does this through deep meditation and by maintaining a pescatarian diet. But what exactly is this Amupac base doing to stop hurricanes? According to Lopez Diaz, it's not the base itself, but the collective belief in its power that generates a force field repelling storms. Think of it as a giant cosmic umbrella powered by sheer faith and a few strategically placed metal bars in the seabed. So why haven't hurricanes hit Ciudad Madero directly since 1966? Climate scientists like Dr. Rosario Romero have a more down-to-earth answer than Lopez Diaz's explanation. She points to broader atmospheric conditions and prevailing winds that push major hurricanes north toward the US rather than south to Mexico. But even she admits that the weather patterns here are curious. Despite the science, many locals prefer the mystical explanation. Some believe the aliens protect their base and the city just gets lucky. Others find solace in faith, like the devout Catholics who trust in Our Lady of Mount Carmel. But to make things even more quirky, in 2013, the city installed a bust of a green Martian at Miramar Beach and declared the last Tuesday in October as the Day of the Martian. Sadly, though, the bust was stolen, likely by someone looking for a unique garden gnome to protect their crops. Whether you believe in alien gardens, mystical force fields, or just good old-fashioned atmospheric science, Ciudad Madero's hurricane-free streak is one for the books. And as hurricane season rolls in, a mix of practical preparations and a bit of extraterrestrial hope might just keep this city safe one more year. Let me know if you believe in this so-called alien base in the comments. Invisible whirlpools. Getting sucked into a giant invisible underwater whirlpool while swimming in the ocean just made its way onto my long list of fears. It sounds like something that might only happen in a sci-fi movie, but these underwater eddies, as they are also called, are very real, and they are as fascinating as they are dangerous. Let's start with the basics. What causes these whirlpools? Tidal currents, which are powerful flows of water created by the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun, can produce giant eddies. Famous ones like the Maelstrom off the Norwegian coast have been known for centuries and are notorious for being shipping hazards. These whirlpools are so powerful that they've inspired legends like the Kraken. You know, the mythical sea monster said to drag ships down to their doom. But here's where things get really scary. Not all whirlpools are visible from the surface. Some are deep underwater and can be even more dangerous because you can't see them. These are called deep eddies, and they form when the ocean currents flow around underwater features like seamounts. Seamounts are basically submerged mountains. They don't bother surface ships, but they can wreak havoc on submarines. For example, in 2014, a Chinese submarine named Submarine 372 had a terrifying experience with one of these deep eddies. The crew was cruising along when suddenly it was as if they fell into an abyss. The submarine started plunging into an ocean trench unexpectedly, causing a pressure pipe to burst and water to flood in. Thankfully, the quick-thinking crew managed to seal the valves and release gas to increase buoyancy, and this saved the sub from being crushed by the immense pressure. Since this near disaster, researchers from the Guangzhou Institute of Oceanology have been on a mission to map these underwater whirlpools in the trough. This is an abyssal part of the ocean off Hainan. By identifying these deep eddies, they hope to protect submarines and also learn more about how water and sediment mix in the deep oceans. Zakynthos Structures. Near the island of Zakynthos in Greece, divers thought they discovered an ancient city with floors and courtyards and columns, but spoiler alert, they didn't. Instead, they found some seriously funky geological formations. I'm sure you're wondering, what exactly did these underwater ruins look like? Some looked like pipes, some like discs, and others were donut-shaped. But they are not the remnants of an ancient civilization, at least according to mainstream scientists. To them, they are actually the result of a natural phenomenon from the Pliocene epoch, which was up to 5 million years ago. But if these structures are just natural formations, how were they ever mistaken as remnants of a lost civilization? This site was first discovered by snorkelers who thought they had found an ancient city port. There were what looked like circular column bases and paved floors. But unfortunately, there were no signs of ancient life like pottery or tools. And that's when things got fishy for researchers. Or rather, not fishy enough. Archaeologists from the Greek Ministry of Culture's Effort of Underwater Antiquities teamed up with scientists from the University of East Anglia and the University of Athens. They wanted to get to the bottom of the mystery once and for all. Using fancy techniques like microscopy, X-rays, and chemical analysis, the team studied the mineral content of these weird formations. And guess what they found? The so-called ruins were actually fossilized remains of an ancient plumbing system beneath the sea floor, one not built by human hands. They were natural pipes for methane and other hydrocarbons escaping into the water. Over time, microbes in the sediment used the methane as fuel and formed a natural cement around the structures. This process is known to geologists as concretion. Then the resulting structures exposed by erosion got a makeover from modern marine organisms. So what looked like an ancient city was really just a bunch of natural donuts and pipes created by Mother Nature herself. Talk about a plot twist. The study's main researcher, Julian Andrews, said the formations look like those that are usually created by underwater gas leaks. These are typically found in much deeper water though, making this discovery near Zakynthos quite rare. So, no ancient city, but a cool geological phenomenon instead. It was like nature was playing a prank. Baltic Sea Megastructure. Imagine diving into the deep blue Baltic Sea expecting to find nothing but fish and seaweed. But instead, you discover something extraordinary, a massive structure from the Stone Age. That's exactly what happened for researchers in 2021. It was like finding a time capsule from 11,000 years ago, revealing secrets about ancient humans. Researchers from Kiel University in Germany made the astonishing discovery. In the Bay of Mecklenburg, off the coast of Rerik, they uncovered a row of stones at a depth of 69 feet. And this wasn't just a random pile of rocks. It was a meticulously arranged wall made of 1,670 stones stretching over half a mile. This thing is like an underwater Great Wall of China, but a lot shorter, and built by ancient hunters. Apparently, back then, hunters were also skilled architects. So what's the big deal with this wall? Dr. Jacob Gearson and his team believe it was used for hunting reindeer. They weren't just good for pulling Santa's sleigh, they were also a major food source for these ancient people. The wall likely guided reindeer into a narrow area or even into a lake, making them easy targets for Stone Age hunters. It was like the ultimate prehistoric fast food joint, offering a reindeer drive-thru, but uncovering the purpose of an underwater structure isn't as simple as saying, oh look, a wall. Researchers had to collect sediment samples, create a 3D model of the wall, and reconstruct what the landscape looked like back then. It turns out, after the last ice age, rising sea levels flooded the area. This submerged what used to be dry land and transformed it into the Baltic Sea we know today. This discovery suggests that hunter-gatherers were more settled than previously thought. Dr. Marcel Bratmuller pointed out that building such a massive structure implies that these groups were pretty territorial. They weren't just wandering around. They had a specific area they cared about and invested time and effort into building complex hunting traps. This is the first Stone Age hunting structure found in the Baltic Sea, but similar setups have been found around the world. In Lake Huron, Michigan, archaeologists found stone walls used to hunt caribou. These ancient people were super smart, using their environment to catch dinner long before anyone ever heard of takeout. Blobus Purpilis. What would you do if you found a mysterious glowing purple blob with a high-tech underwater vehicle? Researchers had to ask themselves that question when they discovered that same thing exploring the deep waters around the Channel Islands. A team aboard the research vessel EV Nautilus were responsible for the discovery. But what exactly did they find? Listen to this and let me know what you think in the comments below. Was it an alien egg? A disco ball for fish parties? The scientists had no clue, but they were determined to find out. Using the suction arm of their underwater robot, they grabbed the mysterious orb for a closer look. And upon examination, they noticed that the blob had two distinct lobes. This led to some early guesses. One theory is that this strange purple thing is a type of sea slug, possibly a nudibranch. Nudibranches are marine mollusks known for their bright colors and lack of shells. They're like the show-offs of the sea, flaunting their flashy looks, while other sea creatures stick to shells and camouflage. But here's where the discovery gets even more exciting. This blob could be a creature no human has ever seen before. It's not every day you discover a mysterious purple who knows what floating in the ocean. The scientists are eager to find out if this is a new species, but that process could take years. Science, after all, is all about patience and thorough investigation. So why does it matter what this thing is? Discovering new species helps us understand the diversity of life in our oceans and can even give us insights into the health of marine ecosystems. Plus, finding new creatures is just plain cool. Imagine telling your friends that you discovered a new type of sea slug that looks like a glow-in-the-dark gummy bear. Instant bragging rights. For now, scientists are calling this thing Blobus Purpilis, and you know what? It couldn't have a more fitting name. Underwater crop circles. In 1995, deep-sea divers off Japan stumbled upon a mesmerizing sight. Intricate circular patterns on the ocean floor. They kind of looked like underwater crop circles. These formations baffled scientists for years until the unlikely creators were finally unveiled. Small pufferfish, previously unknown to science. These pint-sized artists are only about 5 inches long. These tiny fish are just looking for love. Imagine a tiny pufferfish flapping its fins like a mad artist, swirling up sediment in a carefully choreographed dance. The result? Circles up to 6.5 feet wide, about the height of a basketball hoop. After the males finish their aquatic masterpiece, females swim by to inspect the finished product. If they approve, they lay their eggs in the center of the circle while the males fertilize them externally. No dinner and a movie needed underwater. Once the deed is done, the females disappear, leaving the males to stand guard over their precious eggs for the next week or so. The pufferfish dads protect the family home. Interestingly, these pufferfish circles aren't just pretty, they serve a practical purpose too. The patterns are designed in a way that funnels water and fine sediments toward the center, creating a calm, cozy spot for egg laying. It's like nature's version of a cozy nest, complete with built-in egg protection from turbulent currents. These circles aren't just a quirky hobby for pufferfish. They are a biological marvel, similar to how birds build elaborate nests to attract mates. It's all about showing off. I mean, demonstrating survival skills in the animal kingdom. And scientists love this discovery because it's a rare example where biology gives a clear answer to a long-standing mystery. You're welcome. The 17th century cauldron. What if I told you that a mysterious copper dome found at the bottom of the ocean might be one of the world's first submarines? No, this isn't a plot twist from a sci-fi movie. This real-life mystery started in 1980 when divers recovered a copper dome near the wreck of the Santa Margarita, a Spanish treasure galleon that sank in 1622 near Florida. Initially, everyone thought this big round object was an oversized cooking cauldron. It's been sitting at the Mel Fisher Museum in Florida for decades. But guess what? New research suggests that this cauldron might actually be the top of a 17th century diving bell. A diving bell is a kind of submarine used for underwater exploration. Imagine a large upside-down cup that traps air and allows divers to breathe while they're underwater. Remember in Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl? Well, there's a scene in that movie where Captain Jack Sparrow and Will Turner use an upturned rowboat to trap air and allow them to breathe as they walk along the seafloor. Same concept, but slightly different. According to maritime archaeologists Sean Kingsley and Jim Sinclair, members of the original team that found the dome, the object's size and shape fit the description of these early submarines. It's way too big for cooking and has no signs of charring or heating. Instead, it's made from 2 copper sheets and has a heavy rim with copper rivets all around it. Now here's where things get really interesting. The dome was found near a bunch of iron ingots, which researchers think were used to anchor the diving bell to the seafloor. Plus, the Spanish were known to be early pioneers in using diving bells. A Spaniard named Francisco Núñez Melian even wrote about casting a diving bell in 1625. Could this mysterious dome be what's left of Melian's diving bell? Sinclair and Kingsley think so. They believe the dome was the top part of a diving bell, with the lower parts made of wood and leather, which have since decayed. This diving bell could have been big enough for 3 divers and might have been connected to an air hose. Why is this important? Well, if the Santa Margarita salvage in the 17th century was so successful, recovering 350 silver ingots, thousands of gold coins, and 8 cannons, maybe they used this diving bell to get the treasure. The Mariana Trench virus. Deep in the depths of the Mariana Trench, where even James Cameron might hesitate to explore, scientists have discovered something mind-boggling. A virus so deep, it's the Mariana Trench of viruses. Meet VB-HMY-H4907, the virus that is making waves, or rather sinking quietly at a depth of around 29,000 feet. This virus isn't your average cold bug. It's a bacteriophage, which means it infects bacteria by hijacking their cellular machinery to make more copies of itself. Think of it like a microscopic vampire, but instead of blood, it craves bacteria. Scientists believe this virus has adapted to survive in extreme environments where it's so deep, even the fish need scuba gear. And what's even weirder and cooler is how it infects its host bacteria. Unlike most viruses that go for the kill, this one plays it sneaky. It sneaks its genetic material into the bacterial genome and quietly replicates itself without causing immediate harm. It's like a house guest who moves in and starts redecorating without you noticing. Except in this case, the house is a bacteria and the guest is a virus. But why should we care about viruses at the bottom of the ocean? For one, they are like tiny astronauts exploring Earth's final frontier. They give us clues about how life survives in places where sunlight never reaches and pressure is higher than your stress levels. Scientists are pretty excited about this discovery because it's only the third virus known to infect a deep-sea bacteria called Halomonas. In the future, scientists want to uncover more about these mysterious viruses and how they interact with their bacterial buddies. Hopefully, researchers don't bring up anything too creepy that can cause another disaster like 2020. Ancient weapons chest. In the murky depths of southern Sweden lies a treasure chest of history. Divers stumbled upon the wreck of the Gribsjunden, a 15th century Danish warship. The vessel sank in 1495 after a fiery mishap involving gunpowder. Inside this sunken time capsule, archaeologists discovered something straight out of a pirate movie. A chest brimming with tools for making lead bullets for early handguns. Think of it as a medieval ammunition DIY kit, complete with molds for bullets and canisters for gunpowder. But why is this chest such a big deal? It gives us a peek into a pivotal moment in naval warfare history. Before the age of blasting enemies from afar with cannons, ships mostly duked it out like knights in armor, ramming each other and throwing shade and swords in close combat. The Gribsjunden's arsenal, however, hints at a shift towards more modern tactics involving firearms, a trend that wouldn't fully catch wind until a century later. Rolf Warming, one of the marine archaeologists behind this discovery, geeked out over the find. Using fancy tech like photogrammetry to create a 3D model of the chest, they have pieced together its contents and speculated about its origins. Turns out, it likely belonged to a rowdy bunch of German-speaking mercenaries sailing under the Danish king's flag. They were likely planning to press Sweden into rejoining the Kalmar Union, a medieval Scandinavian Avengers team, when things went boom. The wreck also yielded other relics like chainmail armor and combat platforms strategically built into the ship's hull. The ancient version of rooftop snipers, perhaps? These platforms, according to Warming, are where terms like forecastle, for you ship lingo aficionados, likely began. Diving into a Soviet prison. Beneath the tranquil waters of a lake in Estonia lie the haunting remains of a Soviet prison. Welcome to Rumu Prison, where the only inmates left are the fishes. Most of the prison is underwater, with the rest of it on the verge of toppling over into the lake. This prison is like the Estonian version of Alcatraz. In a surprising twist of history, this Soviet prison has now become a popular diving spot. In 1937, the first wooden structures were built on the island. The whole prison consisted of a single guard post, 2 barracks to hold the inmates, a factory, and a quarry. The prisoners here were forced to mine limestone at the quarry, more specifically Vasalema limestone, for the production of marble. In 1938, a new marble factory began its operations nearby, and the inmates were used as an easy source of labor. By 1949, the prison had become a small colony. There were more than 400 official inmates put to work in the quarry and at the factory every single day, but the number is likely much higher. More structures were built throughout the 1960s to house what had become a Soviet prison city. Then the limestone started to run out. Not to worry, there were still factories that needed workers. The prison colony only started to fade after the Soviet Union collapsed and Estonia regained its independence. The new Estonia, absent its Soviet overlords, was not as interested in forced labor. When the decision was made to abandon the quarry at Rumu prison, the water overflow stopped. The water overflow had been used to provide water to the settlement and to irrigate the nearby fields. Without this overflow, the water levels started to suddenly rise on the western side of the quarry. This led to a rapid rise in the water level across the entire prison. Soon, the industrial complex was underwater. The once bustling factories, now silent and shrouded in algae, sank beneath the rising waters. The prison didn't officially shut down until January 1st, 2013. Now, the flooded corridors where Soviet prisoners toiled in agony are explored by curious divers and adventurous tourists. The Sunken City of Sin. Unearthed from the depths is a stunning marble floor that whispers tales of ancient Roman indulgence. Rome's Sin City was a place where elite Romans took vacations, but not the kinds of vacations normal people take. They went on extravagant escapes in which their every insatiable desire was met. In the city of Baiae, the rich could buy just about anything, kind of like Las Vegas. Then the city sank and everyone was sucked into the ocean. Many ancient historians blamed the disaster on cosmic payback, saying the Romans were too sinful and deserved what the gods did to them. Take, for example, the writings of somebody named Sextus Propertius. Sextus described the city of Baiae as a den of licentiousness and vice, like Las Vegas. Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger called it a harbor of vice and advised people to stay away from it at all costs. These days, the ruins of Baiae are submerged at the edge of the Gulf of Pozzuoli in southern Italy. During the most recent archaeological expedition, researchers investigated a sunken villa. Inside the villa, they uncovered a gorgeous mosaic of marble, pearl, and glass. I should quickly name drop a few famous celebs who had their villas built in Baiae: Julius Caesar, Emperor Nero, and Emperor Hadrian, just to name a few. Whoever came here rubbed elbows with Roman royalty. The mosaic is larger than life. It extends more than 2,700 square feet, and no doubt saw its share of indulgence in its time. Researchers can only guess at the kinds of parties that took place on the marble mosaic floor. Here's a picture of the few surviving mosaic tiles from the wealthy villa, thanks to Edoardo Ruspantini. The fish don't seem to have any clue they are swimming through history. This is just one more of many marvels that have been found under the sea. The Las Vegas of the Roman world is currently undergoing restoration, and it is now an underwater archaeological park. So, if you go visit, be sure to let me know. Russian cannons in the Bermuda Triangle. A maritime mystery has surfaced in the crystal clear waters of the Bahamas. A cluster of Russian cannons dating back over 100 years has been discovered, which seem extremely out of place. How did they get here? Carl Allen is one of the biggest names in underwater artifact recovery. His company, Allen Exploration, has been hard at work recovering treasure from the wreckage of Nuestra Señora de las Maravillas, the Spanish galleon that sank in 1656. Many of the incredible treasures from the Spanish ship are on display right now at the Bahamas Maritime Museum. It's worth a visit. While not collecting Spanish booty, Carl and his team have been uncovering Russian weapons. They think the mysterious cannons were fired by Russian forces during the siege of Sevastopol. This siege predates the First World War by nearly a century. The Russians were in a desperate fight against the Ottomans, the English, and the French during the Crimean War of 1853 to 1855. These are Imperial Russian guns, fired in battle over 170 years ago. What are they doing in the Bahamas instead of, Russia? Carl Allen said he and the whole team were surprised by the discovery. That's saying a lot because Allen's team finds all kinds of weird stuff in the Bahamas. They've discovered gold chains, chunks of amethyst, clay tobacco pipes, and many, many other objects. Russian cannons have never been on the menu before. The cannons were found in relatively shallow water, only about 30 feet below the surface on the edge of Little Bahama Bank. Experts know the guns are Russian because they bear the double-headed eagle of the Russian Tsar. The weapons are also inscribed with Cyrillic text, which points to them being produced in a Russian foundry in the late 1800s or early 1810s. Great, but how did they get to the Bahamas? That's what everyone is wanting to know. Carl Allen's team doesn't have the foggiest idea. What they do know is what's written in the history books. After Russia was defeated in the Crimean War, England and France took a lot of spoils for themselves. It's believed they confiscated 4,000 cannons from the Russians as part of their victory condition.
Here's an amazing fact for you. I know how much you love these. When the Russian cannons got back to France, most of them were melted down to build the Notre Dame de France statue. Just please don't confuse the Notre Dame de France with the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Some of the other cannons were given over to naval establishments across Great Britain, including in British dominions and dependencies. This was pre-World War I, so places like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Gibraltar still belonged to the British Crown. Almost none of these guns survive today, which makes the ones just discovered in the Bahamas incredibly rare. Some of them may have even witnessed an earlier war. Because the Cyrillic inscriptions were traced back to the Alexandrovsky ironworks as early as 1807, the guns may have seen some action during the Napoleonic War. That legendary war didn't end until 1850.
If this could be proven, these guns might be worth their weight in cash.
Even if not, it is still a big discovery, and it was made in the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe the power of the triangle has something to do with how the cannons ended up there.
They don't seem to be part of any shipwreck. Researchers have only found the cannons by themselves scattered across the ocean floor. And now for a quick break. But first, I want to give a big shout out to James Woodring and I Am Bush for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family, because why not?
The Underwater Road.
Archaeologists have made some astonishing discoveries while studying a sunken city 7,000 years old. They've been scanning the ancient city to create a three-dimensional map of the landscape. The landscape is complete with rivers, estuaries, and a road built in the Stone Age, and the city itself.
Archaeologists have named the city Selene, but they have no idea what it was originally called. How could they? It was built on an artificial landmass by a culture most people have never heard of. If building your own island weren't so much work, I would totally do it, but it seems like DIY islands tend to sink. Anyway, the culture is known as the Havar, and they dominated the area of what is now Croatia in prehistoric times. They used a method of stacking stones to build their artificial landmass. They piled up rocks off the coast until the pile reached the surface of the water. I know, that's a ton of rocks. Then they built their city on that pile of rocks. They made their own island. Melting glaciers at the end of the Ice Age, around 12,000 years ago, led to post-glacial flooding. But the process was slow. After about 7,000 years, the sea rose along the coast of Croatia enough to flood the Havar's artificial city. They built their own island, and Mother Nature took it away.
Now, archaeologists are trying to create a full 3D image of what the area looked like before it was flooded. Take a look at this image, courtesy of the University of Bradford. You can see a tributary, a wetlands area, and a narrow channel of water. This is all submerged now. Here you can see the artificial city where it sits just below the surface, thanks to the University of Zadar.
It surprised archaeologists when they discovered this undersea landscape. Dr. Simon Fitch, the lead investigator for the project, said the results of the scans provided far more detail than they had been expecting. They never imagined that the imprint of the rivers and estuaries would still be so visible.
But what about the Havar? Why did they feel a necessity to build an artificial island and put a city on it?
This question is a little more complicated than you might think. Another recent exploration uncovered a different Havar settlement nearby in Bredina Bay. This other settlement is almost identical to the one called Selene. It's about 15 feet below sea level and was also built on an artificial island.
Take a look at this image. It shows a diver investigating a road from 7,000 years ago. Scientists uncovered the road beneath a layer of what they call sea slime, which you see pushed up on the left of where the diver is.
The Havar could have easily built a city on the coast, but instead they built islands. Researchers don't know if they were trying to protect themselves from invaders, or maybe it was easier for fishing.
The whole thing is bizarre and only gets weirder with each new discovery. That being said, scientists are hopeful. They think that if they can only understand the Havar, they'll be able to bridge the civilizations of Greece and Rome with truly prehistoric societies.
The Marine Pompeii. Scientists recently announced the discovery of an underwater Pompeii off the coast of Morocco. You won't believe what was buried under the solid ash. Volcanoes at the boundary of tectonic plates are known for some of the most disastrous eruptions, trapping life and preserving it underneath thick layers of ash. That's what happened to Pompeii when Vesuvius blew its top. That is also what happened off the coast of Morocco 515 million years ago. Only instead of Roman citizens being preserved as eternal statues, trilobites were the victims of the ancient eruption. Scientists were blown away by the trilobites they found buried beneath ancient volcanic sediment. Make no mistake, these are the best preserved trilobite fossils ever discovered. These fossils have anatomical details that have been missed by scientists for the last 200 years. They are revealing secrets of the ancient animals that would have likely never been discovered otherwise. How much do you know about trilobites? Probably not a lot, but that's not your fault. These weird bug-like shell creatures look more like something you'd find in Pokemon than in real life. The truth is, they've been extinct since the end of the Paleozoic, which was about 252 million years ago. Trilobites were marine arthropods. Their closest living descendants are horseshoe crabs. Maybe you've seen the weird videos online of horseshoe crabs being harvested for their blue blood. Those are the modern versions of trilobites. I forgot to mention that there were at least 22,000 different species of trilobite. Because of their calcite exoskeleton, they fossilized very easily. And that's why scientists have found so many of them. During the volcanic eruption in Morocco 500 million years ago, living organisms were buried by the pyroclastic flows. But when everything solidified, it left the finest details of the trilobites preserved so well, it's scary. Check out this view of one of the trilobites thanks to Professor Abderrazak El Albani from the University of Poitiers. You can see each individual hair. You can see the spines along the appendages, and you can even see the digestive tube completely filled with ash. The tiny little shells attached to the exoskeleton are visible as well. If only scientists could find this level of fossil for something like a T-Rex or a Velociraptor. That would be amazing. The USS Harder. 80 years after it sank, a U.S. Navy submarine's wreckage has been found in the South China Sea. The discovery is part of a larger project that's been finding submarines since 2001. This is a brand new discovery from World War II, and it's super exciting to military enthusiasts. Perhaps because this submarine is famous for sinking the most Japanese warships in the entire war. This is the wreckage of the USS Harder, just discovered by Tiburon Subsea CEO Tim Taylor as part of the Lost 52 project. I've talked a little about this project before. It's an initiative that was launched to discover all of the 52 American submarines that were lost during the war. The project recovered its first submarine in 2001, the USS S-36. Since then, they have found 13 more, with the USS Harder being the most recent in May of 2024. Other famous submarines found by Tim Taylor include the USS Stickleback, which sank when it collided with the USS Silverstein during a training exercise near Hawaii, and the USS Greyback, which was bombed by a Japanese B-5N torpedo bomber in the East China Sea. The USS Harder was hit by a depth charge while attacking Japanese escort ships in August of 1944. The submarine didn't go down without a fight. Before it sank, it managed to sink 3 Japanese destroyers, which, let me say, is a major achievement. It also severely damaged 2 other destroyers before it sank. The submarine came to rest 3,000 feet off the coast of Luzon in the Philippines. Here's an image of it now, courtesy of Tim Taylor. It's 4D, not just 3D. I can't wait to see what Project 52 finds next. The mountain sanctuary of the spaghetti monsters. During a recent expedition off the coast of Chile, scientists from the Schmidt Ocean Institute made a groundbreaking discovery: a submerged giant that dwarfs even the most famous peaks on land. They found a huge mountain. It's the biggest mountain you've never seen. The towering natural formation stands 900 miles off the coast of Chile, completely submerged. It is almost 2 miles tall. I'm not sure most people can grasp just how big this thing is. You know about the Burj Khalifa, right? The current tallest building in the world? This new undersea island is as tall as 4 Burj Khalifas stacked one on top of the other. It's bigger than Mount Olympus in Greece, but it's not quite bigger than Mount Fuji in Japan, and it's still not as large as Mount Everest. But come on, that's a hard record to beat. The truly special part of this discovery was the new species that were found flourishing on the underwater mountain. The seamount, as scientists more appropriately call it, is part of a vast underwater range. The undersea mountains are home to sponge gardens, coral cities, and extremely rare animals. Researchers with the Schmidt Ocean Institute spent 28 days on board the research vessel Falkor as they studied the sunken mountains. Falkor is a pretty cool name. The scientists were equipped with the latest in sonar technology, which allowed them to map the mountains using sound waves. As of right now, it's estimated that only 26% of the sea floor has been mapped with this level of precision. That's not much, but it is something. As you may know, the ocean floor covers approximately 71% of the planet's surface. It's no surprise that scientists also found strange species during their mission. They documented one of my favorite octopuses, the Casper octopus. It is a cephalopod so rare that no one has ever caught one. Since there isn't a single specimen in a jar in any laboratory around the world, scientists have never been able to give it a scientific name. It's only known as the Casper octopus. Why Casper? Because it's pale white and looks like a friendly ghost. The research team also documented a pair of animals known as Bathyphysa siphonophores. That name is a little much, so you can just call them flying spaghetti monsters. They earned their nickname because they look like weird masses of spaghetti floating in the ocean. Last but hardly not least, scientists captured footage of one of the rarest squids in the world, the Promacoteuthis squid. To date, only a handful of samples have been collected of this squid, and most of them are from the 1800s. The entire genus has only been categorized by dead samples found in fishing nets. The footage taken by the Schmidt Ocean Institute was the first time a Promacoteuthis squid was caught on camera, and it is pretty awesome. The squid looks utterly terrifying with its bluish-purple brain sac and blood-red tentacles. The silver dagger of Minoa. A very cool dagger has been found at the bottom of the sea, and it dates to 3,600 years ago. The dagger is silver and bronze. It was recovered from the ruins of a shipwreck. The ship had been carrying a cargo of copper ingots when it went down for unknown reasons. Everything about the dagger and the shipwreck is mysterious. That's why archaeologists are hard on the case trying to make sense of it. The excavation team, led by Dr. Hakan Onitz from Akdeniz University, believes the ship was associated with the Minoan civilization in the Greek island of Crete. The Minoans, as a refresh, were seafaring people of the Bronze Age. Their civilization emerged from a much more ancient Neolithic culture 5,100 years ago. They began constructing urban settlements on Crete about 1,000 years later. Many researchers think they were the first true civilized people of Europe. Some even think the Minoans were the inspiration behind the legend of Atlantis. Being an island nation isn't always all it's cracked up to be. Around 1450 BC, the Minoans found themselves being culturally influenced by the rapidly progressing Greeks on the mainland, known as the Mycenaeans. These were the people who went to war against the Trojans, if the myths are to be believed. Soon, the Minoans and Mycenaeans had melted into a hybrid culture. It would last until the collapse of the Bronze Age in 1100 BC. The newly found dagger dates to around the time that Minoa and Mycenae hybridized. It was an era of great maritime advancements. The Minoans were a major force to be reckoned with on the high seas. Their trading networks extended to Egypt, Cyprus, the Levant, and beyond. This dagger, shockingly well preserved despite its age, likely belongs to somebody on the ship when it sank. But that's about all the information anyone has. Nobody knows if it was the captain's knife or if it belonged to a crew member. But the dagger symbolizes so much more than just a dagger. The Faces of the Pharaohs. Beneath the murky waters of the Nile, a forgotten world has been unearthed. Rock carvings of ancient Egyptian pharaohs have been found hiding underwater. Archaeologists were blown away when a diving expedition in the Nile River revealed hieroglyphic inscriptions and the immortal faces of dead Egyptian kings. This incredible new find was made near the city of Aswan in southern Egypt, not far from the famous temple complex of Abu Simbel. When the Aswan High Dam was built in 1960, before the flooding that forced Abu Simbel to be dismantled and put back together, UNESCO tried to record as many archaeological remains as they could find. But UNESCO could only do so much, and ultimately the area was flooded. Even though Abu Simbel was saved, nobody knows how much wasn't saved. There's no realistic guess for how many temples, pyramids, and monuments were still hidden under the sand and are now under both sand and water. These days, scientists can dive right into the Nile and try to find things that were lost. That's how these new carvings were discovered, with the efforts of a joint French-Egyptian team. They found depictions of a few pharaohs whose names you might be familiar with. Pharaohs like Amenhotep III, crowned king in 1390 BC, or Thutmose IV, and more. There's not much I can tell you about the inscriptions or the hieroglyphics. Everything appears to be well preserved, but scientists don't even know what they're looking at yet. Yes, they recognize the pharaohs, but more work needs to be done to figure out what exactly is drowning in the Nile. Is this a temple, a random wall? What's going on? I can tell you that in ancient times, Aswan was a very important place for the Egyptians. It often marked their southernmost border, separating the lands of Egypt from the lands of Nubia. Abu Simbel was built here with its colossal statues of Ramses the Great. Ramses immortalized himself in stone effigies, each one standing 69 feet tall. Another cool fact about Aswan is that it's home to the Philae Temple complex, a place that some say marks the death of ancient Egypt. They say that because it was at the Philae Temple where the last Egyptian hieroglyphic inscription was made. In 394 AD, a scribe or a scholar etched Egyptian hieroglyphics into rough stone, and then nobody ever did again. The ocean under the ocean. An ocean has been discovered under the ocean. That's probably not something you were expecting to hear today. This discovery is freaking scientists out. Centuries ago, scientists used to think the world was hollow. Then scientists realized the planet is made of layers and has a molten core. And now they are having to insert a liquid ocean inside the planet. What will they find beneath our feet next? Don't count on going swimming in the sub-ocean anytime soon, though. It's about 400 miles under the surface. You'll have to stick to the nearest beach for now. Scientists at Northwestern University were behind the amazing find. They think that understanding this vast unseen ocean could solve a mystery as old as the planet itself: where water came from. Scientists have been debating the origin of our planet's water for years. Some believe that it was comets that brought water to Earth. When icy comets hit the surface, the ice they carried melted. It took a lot of comets, many millions of years, but eventually all that water accumulated into the world's oceans. This new discovery makes the comet theory obsolete. Researchers led by geophysicist Stephen Jacobson found the massive water reservoir within Earth's mantle. The mantle is the extremely hot layer beneath the crust. This hidden ocean, below the crust and in the mantle, is about 3 times the size of all the surface oceans combined. That's pretty incredible. It's also a lot of water. It's hard to even fathom double the amount of water that's in all the oceans of the world. Tripling it makes my brain feel like it's overflowing. You might be wondering how scientists made this groundbreaking discovery. It took 2,000 seismographs deployed in a network across the United States. Each seismograph was like an ear pressed to the surface of the Earth. Scientists listened to the slightest trembling of the planet, analyzed all the data, and realized that seismic waves were passing through an ocean. The interior ocean acts like a sponge, slowing the waves down in a very specific way. There is still a ton of work to be done for scientists to make sense of the inner ocean. Stephen Jacobson said that without this reservoir, it's possible the surface of our planet would be barren. If the water wasn't trapped inside the planet, Earth could be covered in a vast ocean with only a few mountain peaks sticking out at the surface. The tips of Mount Everest would be islands in this scenario. The fateful voyage of the Vasa. The Vasa was a Swedish warship destined for glory, only it never got the glory the shipbuilders anticipated. The vessel met a premature demise during its inaugural journey almost 400 years ago to the day. The Vasa was the Titanic of the 17th century. This mighty ship was commissioned by none other than King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden. I say none other than, but I have a hunch not many people ever heard of this Swedish king. He wanted the Vasa to be a proud military vessel that would showcase Sweden's naval supremacy. And it was, right up until the point it set sail. 1 mile from the harbor, the warship capsized. It began sailing and then suddenly flipped over and sank, drifting all the way to the bottom of the sea. The shipbuilders had done an atrocious job. There were too many heavy cannons on the upper decks. There was inadequate stability. The design faults were so numerous that it didn't even make it to the open ocean. The warship, supposed to be ferocious and unsinkable, didn't fade into obscurity like so many other sunken vessels. It could have sat at the bottom of the sea forgotten forever, but it didn't. The Vasa's story lived on. Then, in 1961, Swedish archaeologists rediscovered its sunken remains. The ship was sitting in the exact same place where it sank all those years ago in 1628. Beneath a perpetual cloud of sediment, the ship was almost perfectly preserved. It owes its preservation to the chilly temperature and lack of oxygen at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. What followed was one of the most triumphant salvage and restoration jobs in human history. A team used hydraulic jacks, pontoons, and countless other pieces of machinery to raise the vessel from the bottom of the sea. It took years, painstakingly hoisting the ship 1 inch at a time, but it was totally worth it in the end. The Vasa emerged from the water in front of an international audience. It was a living piece of the past, the intricate carvings along its stern still visible after so many years underwater. Today, the ship looks mostly the same as it did when it sank. It's standing inside the Vasa Museum as one of the only fully intact 17th century warships on the planet. The next time you're in Sweden, I highly suggest visiting the museum. Saving the cave. You're not going to believe this underwater cave in France. Humans used to actually live here. It's underwater now and has been that way for thousands of years. You can only enter the cavern by diving to its entrance about 120 feet beneath the surface. How the ancient people got into the cave was a little easier. They didn't require the complex diving equipment that modern archaeologists need for investigating the famous Kosker Cave, because during the glacial Pleistocene era, 33,000 years ago, the entrance to the cavern was 330 feet above sea level. Archaeologist Michel Olive said the cave used to be 6.2 miles from the coast. It was occupied at a time when the global sea level was 443 feet lower than it is today. Just try to imagine all that fantastic waterfront property. Climate change caused the sea levels to rise, flooding the cavern. It is now the only place in the world with prehistoric underwater marine art. That is quite an accomplishment. But the artwork isn't going to be around forever. Scientists are in a race against Mother Nature to save the marine art from our modern climate change conundrum. In 2011 alone, the water level of Kosker Cave rose 5 inches. Global sea levels rise a few millimeters each year, and the water is getting closer and closer to the ancient paintings. Check out this picture courtesy of Jespa. On the left is the location of the cave. You can't see it because it's underwater, but that's what it looks like at the surface. The right side is the diagram showing how the water has flowed into the cave over the centuries. Because parts of the cave are higher than sea level, they remain dry, and that is where the art is. It was plastered on the walls by prehistoric people up until about 18,000 years ago. The French cave was discovered by Henri Kosker in 1985, and what followed was a deadly disaster. In the 6 years before the discovery was announced to the public, dozens of divers and amateur adventurers risked their lives trying to get inside of it. These were people in the know. They knew about the discovery by word of mouth, and 3 divers died trying to see the ancient art. On September 1st, 1991, the trio of divers from Grenoble couldn't find the exit and ran out of oxygen. Henri Kosker helped recover the bodies. 2 days later, Henri finally, after 6 years, revealed the cave to French authorities. It was such a bombshell discovery that people didn't believe it was real. French prehistorians like Brigitte Deluc and Denis Vialou doubted the cave's authenticity. There are 229 rock art figures on the walls. think about how much has been lost considering 4/5 of the cave is already underwater. The art figures represent 13 different species of creatures. There are also 69 red and black handprints, some made by children, and some look like they were made by E.T. What's really interesting is that archaeologists have found that people most likely didn't live in the cave. They haven't found any evidence of a permanent habitation. It seems that people only went into Kosker Cave to make paintings. It was an art studio. But why? What attracted our ancestors to dark caves to express their artistic creativity? Although you can't see the cave now with your own eyes, in 2022, a life-sized replica opened in the town of Marseille. If you want to see the hundreds of geometric signs, depictions of human body parts, and prehistoric monsters drawn on the cave's walls, this cave should definitely be on your bucket list. And now for number 8, but first, it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to MK Semposki and hubby, as well as Coco and Dad. Thanks so much for letting us be a part of your day. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about recent archaeological discoveries. Stone Circle in Mexico. A very mysterious ruin has been found in the Mexican village of Tecacahuaco. You may not have heard of the village before, seeing as it's such a small place in Hidalgo, populated mostly by farmers. But this sleepy town is hiding ancient secrets. It was a farmer exploring his land who stumbled upon the ruin. It's an unusual circular structure made from stone, but you can't really tell what it is just by looking at it. The farmer found the structure partially eaten by vegetation, broken and in bad shape. It looks like somebody dropped a bomb on it, but it clearly has some historical significance. In a small community like Tecacahuaco with only around 1,200 people in it, word spreads fast. It didn't take long before other farmers and local villagers were hanging out on the farmer's property to look at the discovery. Then the story started circulating. Suddenly, there were rumors that the structure was considered sacred by ancient healers. The villagers are now claiming that healers would bring their sick patients to the site and perform ceremonies. They would leave offerings to appease the gods, hoping their sacrifices would help the sick to recover faster. There's another rumor that's begun to circulate as well, this one a little more nefarious. A local priest allegedly found other stone monuments in the area a few years ago. The priest ordered them to be destroyed to cover up the truth of the ancient site. This was what the Spanish did when they first invaded the lands of Mexico. They destroyed temples and other holy sites and used the stones to build churches over them. It's hard to believe such a practice is still being carried out by priests in this day and age. It did take a while, but eventually word of the discovery reached archaeologists at Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History. They dispatched a team of researchers to examine the stone monument, and those researchers just released their initial findings. The structure is made of mud plaster bricks. It's about 12 feet tall, with its exterior featuring an intact stone staircase. Ancient people who visited the site would have been able to easily climb to its peak. But what did they do up there? Archaeologists found evidence that the structure was originally encased inside a much larger structure. Picture a squat tower sheltered by a much larger tower, like a Russian nesting doll, only for buildings. It's a surprising mystery because archaeologists can't date the structure and they can't figure out what it is. The ruins of the larger structure are all gone, so that's a dead end. They did find some fragments of obsidian, which was used by Mesoamericans to make tools. But other than that, the experts are stumped. What do you think this structure was used for? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Screaming Mummy Mystery. The mystery behind one of the most terrifying mummies ever discovered could finally be solved. Archaeologists think the Screaming Mummy may have literally died screaming. I have to warn you, the tale I'm about to tell you will chill you to your core. It all began in 1935 with an archaeological expedition to Deir el-Bahari near Luxor. Archaeologists came across the mummified remains of a woman with her mouth wide open. Even though she had been dead for 3,500 years, you can still hear her shrieking just by looking at her. Some people have compared the Screaming Mummy to the famous painting by Edvard Munch, The Scream. You have to admit, the similarities are uncanny. The Screaming Mummy wasn't found alone. She was buried inside a wooden coffin underneath the tomb of Senmut, buried with Senmut's mother. But wait a minute, who was Senmut? His name translates into English as brother of mother. Now that's a little weird. Senmut was a famous architect during the reign of Pharaoh Hatshepsut, who herself was one of the most successful female rulers in human history. Senmut's architectural claim to fame was the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, which still stands all these years later. The screaming mummy was found buried in Senmut's mother's burial chamber. The weird thing is that archaeologists never found any records of the screaming mummy in Senmut's mom's tomb. It's assumed she was a close family friend. According to Dr. Sahar Salim from Cairo University, the screaming mummy was most likely allowed to share the family's eternal resting place. Ever since the 1930s, there has been speculation over why the mummy has her mouth opened in a soundless scream. But nobody ever thought she truly died in agony. Scientists figured her mouth had been stretched open after death due to some natural process, or maybe someone had accidentally opened it and it got stuck that way. Now it looks like some agony was indeed involved. Judging by her expression, a lot of agony. Dr. Salim and her colleagues recently used computerized tomography scanning technology to dissect the mummy virtually. They also used an exciting new technique called X-ray diffraction analysis, which reveals information about the skin and hair. Here are the results of the tests. The screaming mummy stood around 5 feet tall when she was alive. She suffered from a bad case of arthritis in her spine before she died around the age of 48. Researchers couldn't find any sign of an embalming incision, which makes sense because all of her organs were still inside her body. Dr. Salim said the presence of organs was a big surprise. During the New Kingdom of Egypt, between 1550 and 1069 BC, mummies had their organs removed, well, all of their organs except the heart. The only exception was for the less financially fortunate. If people couldn't afford the best embalmers, they sometimes couldn't afford to get all of their organs removed from their loved ones' corpses. The screaming woman wasn't poor, though. She was found decked out in scarab rings of silver and gold. Researchers found traces of resin and frankincense in her hair, which were imported from far away. She was also wearing a wig made from braided date palm fibers. Wigs may have been more fashionable in ancient Egypt than they are today. Certain chemicals were added to the wigs to make a woman's hair look blacker and more youthful. But enough about wigs, you're here for the screaming. Dr. Salim said the reason for the screaming mummy's open mouth could be due to an extraordinarily painful death. The woman may have suffered high emotional stress or an intense burst of pain at her exact moment of passing. Whatever it was, the trauma was bad enough that her mouth got frozen open in a rare form of rigor mortis. The embalmers couldn't even get it closed when they began her burial rites. Maybe they were so freaked out that they didn't bother extracting her organs. They just wanted her buried and out of their workshop. And so her mouth has remained open in an expression of her last painful moment of life for more than 3 millennia. And now she's being poked at by scientists. A Neanderthal Recipie. I'm going to give you a recipe that you won't find on Google. Well, maybe now you can, but I can guarantee it wasn't a recipe your grandmother knew or her grandmother. It was a recipe that was recently replicated by scientists who cooked up a Neanderthal meal. This is what Neanderthals were eating back when they still existed. Neanderthals lived in Europe until about 40,000 years ago. Then they went extinct for reasons not altogether known. Some think they were annihilated by us, aka Homo sapiens. Others believe they bred with ancient Homo sapiens, gradually becoming absorbed by us. They were assimilated. At several Neanderthal sites in Europe, archaeologists have found the remains of hearths. These weren't big fancy fireplaces like you might find in a Viking longhouse. They were primitive pits used for staying warm and cooking. At one such site in Portugal from 90,000 years ago, scientists found the remains of birds. Dr. Mariana Nabais from the Catalan Institute of Human Paleoecology and Social Evolution wanted to understand the bird remains better. To do this, she would recreate a Neanderthal meal in a way that most researchers wouldn't even think of. Mariana went to a local Portuguese wildlife rehabilitation center and collected 5 birds that had died there. She selected birds that were similar in size and species to the ones found at Neanderthal hearths. Two of them were carrion crows, scientific name Corvus coronae. Another was a common wood pigeon, then two Eurasian collared doves. The next step was to prepare the birds using the same culinary instruments as our ancient friends, the Neanderthals. Mariana and her team used flint flakes, which were prepared for them by other scientists. The first step to recreating the Neanderthal recipe is to defeather the birds by hand, then butcher them using the flint flake. Next, roast the birds over hot coals until cooked. In total, this recipe takes about 10 minutes to pull off. I warn you now, it's pretty bland. It's also dirty work. But this is how Neanderthals ate their food. I'm going to give you a bonus recipe today. In 2022, scientists discovered Neanderthal flatbread at the Shanidar cave site in Iraq. Neanderthals were living in the caverns 70,000 years ago. The flatbread proved that Neanderthals didn't just cook burrs and eat berries. They combined nuts and seeds with pulses to cook an actual flatbread. This was the bombshell discovery that revealed Neanderthals to secretly be culinary experts. Do you want to try Neanderthal flatbread? Let me know in the comments. The Roman cult. In Italy, you just never know what you're going to find under a parking lot. Most recently, it turned out to be a pagan temple. The discovery of this ancient sanctuary is shedding some light on a weird period in Roman history. The parking lot in question is located in a tiny town just north of Rome called Spello. During last summer's excavations, Douglas Boyne from St. Louis University dug up the parking lot with his team. They found 3 walls of a broken monumental structure that stood 1,600 years ago. You're never going to guess who the sanctuary was for. It was a temple, the kind you would expect gods to be worshipped. But this one didn't have anything to do with the gods. It was dedicated to the ancestors of Roman emperors. Worshipping emperors was a real thing. Have you ever heard of a dictator wanting to be treated like a god by their subjects? The Roman emperors were just like that. They wanted to be immortalized as deities. Why do you think they built so many crazy big statues of themselves? 1,600 years ago places the temple firmly in the reign of Emperor Constantine in the 4th century. I've talked about Constantine a lot on the channel, but for good reason. He was one of the most influential figures in Roman history. He adopted Christianity as the official religion of the empire. Without him, the Vatican might not even exist. The transitional period from pagans to Christians was a little messy, especially when there were so many false idols around. Even though Constantine adopted Christianity, this newly found temple was built in honor of him and his ancestors. It wasn't exactly Bible-friendly. You might be wondering what convinced an archaeologist from St. Louis University to dig up a parking lot in a small Italian town. Douglas was drawn to the town when he learned of a letter written by Constantine to the people who lived in Spello. The letter was Constantine granting the people of the town permission to celebrate a religious festival in honor of the Roman emperor's ancient family. They wanted to celebrate in their own town instead of journeying to a nearby city where there was an imperial temple. Constantine told them they could celebrate at home, but only if they built a temple dedicated to Constantine and his imperial ancestors. Roman gods like Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva were on the outs. Christianity was in, and so was the imperial cult. This was one of the strangest times in Roman history, when Constantine had his own temples and Jesus had his own churches. The Great Inca Earthquake. Scientists recently conducted a major scientific study in Peru to look at the construction techniques of Machu Picchu. They found that in 1450 AD, the city was struck by a powerful earthquake, one so powerful that it changed Inca society. Scientists think the Inca learned from the disaster. The builders of Machu Picchu switched up their methodology after the quake and started creating earthquake-proof buildings. If this is true, it means a natural disaster inspired one of the greatest technological advancements of ancient engineering. Inca craftsmanship is always exciting and impressive. Even the Romans couldn't contend with the cyclopean walls of Peru's greatest sites. I wonder who would have won in a building competition, the Romans or the Inca? What do you think? 1450 was a good year for the rest of the world. Johann Gutenberg had just started operating the first mechanical printing press. Someone somewhere had just finished writing the mysterious Voynich manuscript. But in Peru, 1450 was not a good year at all. The mountains shook so violently that the walls of their buildings fell over. Humpty Dumpty was knocked right off the wall. The quake was at least 6.5 on the Richter scale. Carlos Escobar was the scientist who coordinated the recent study. Escobar told reporters that when the earthquake struck, Machu Picchu was in the middle of construction. Then construction shifted. Emperor Pachacutec must have ordered a change in the way things were done. But how do scientists know any of this? It's because certain buildings show obvious evidence of the damage. For example, Machu Picchu's Temple of the Sun has some rocks broken on its edges. There was clearly an undulation of the earth, which caused the rocks and stones to form openings. But in other places, the temple is earthquake-proof. Suddenly, the masonry changed in a very clever way. The Inca began using larger stones at the bottom, with their walls narrower at the top. They knew exactly how to change their buildings so that they wouldn't fall down or break when the next earthquake came. There's no doubt about the change, but there is a lot of speculation surrounding the why and the how. If the Inca already knew how to create earthquake-proof buildings, why didn't they start with that technique? Why did they wait for an earthquake? And how did they even know which engineering method would produce the most stable buildings? Machu Picchu is practically indestructible in the face of a seismic event. Even by today's standards, it's pretty impressive. The Forgotten Goddess of War. When I say God of War, what's the first name to come to mind? And don't say Kratos. You're probably thinking about Ares, the Greek god of war. But are you familiar with Minerva, the Roman goddess of war? Yair Whitson from Haifa is a 13-year-old boy who became an unwitting archaeologist in 2024, so earlier this year. He went for a walk with his father and found a ring. I wish I could say it was the one ring to rule them all, but he wasn't that lucky. Yair looked down at the ground and there it was, a bronze ring engraved with the image of a warrior woman. It dates to around the 2nd century AD. I think for most of us, the best treasures we ever find on our walks are a few dusty old pennies. Yair found an 1,800-year-old bronze ring engraved with the image of the goddess of war. The amazing discovery took place near the Shalala ruins in Carmel, Israel, so it wasn't as if the kid found the relic walking through rural New Jersey, but it's still a very fortunate find. Recognizing the importance of the object, Yair's family got in touch with the Israel Antiquities Authority. They took the ring for inspection. A group of researchers confirmed that the figure on the ring is indeed Minerva. She is pictured in the nude, wearing a metal helmet and holding a shield and spear. You haven't seen a more fierce warrioress than this, even if she is only the size of a pea on the back of a ring. Someone wore this piece of jewelry proudly thousands of years ago when Israel was dominated by Rome. Researchers think it was a female who wore it as a sign of her courage, or perhaps her prowess as a warrior or a strategist. The Shalala ruins are complete with a Roman mansion, an ancient rock quarry, and a pair of burials. Whoever owned the ring likely lived at the mansion and was ultra wealthy. As for Minerva, she was the Roman version of Athena. And this is where things get a little bit complicated. Ares and Athena were both Olympians, gods of Mount Olympus. They were also siblings, different moms, but their father was Zeus. Ares was the son of Hera, while Athena was the daughter of Metis. Athena was deeply beloved by the ancient Greeks. I mean, they did name their greatest city after her. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's called Athens. She was known for her diplomacy, her strategies, and her calmness in the face of danger. And while Ares was the specific god of war, Athena was also associated with wartime. She was more of a strategist, though, with her brother Ares being famous for his hot temper, bloodlust, and brutish savagery on the field of battle. In fact, people didn't really like Ares in ancient Greece. He resolved disputes through violence instead of compromise. Even though he was one of the 12 high Olympians, he was poorly regarded in human society. Ares was also largely unsuccessful in his battles. He was known for bringing calamity to humanity whenever he got involved. This was why Athena, with her clever strategies, was venerated more often as a war goddess. The Lost Relics of the Blackfoot Tribe. An archaeological excavation at a Canadian stone circle has revealed some amazing artifacts from long before Europeans ever set foot in North America. You don't hear about that many archaeological digs in Canada, so this recent expedition is a big deal. The excavation was done next to a boring gravel footpath in a Calgary park. It isn't the type of place you expect to see archaeology students hunched over their notepads and resting on their shovels. It also isn't the kind of place you expect to see a stone circle. Keep in mind, this is no Stonehenge. There are no towering megaliths. Up until recently, only parts of the circle were visible, and people didn't even know what they were. People walked by, cut a shortcut straight through the stone circle, and didn't even realize they were walking over an ancient site that belonged to the Blackfoot people. Now, the University of Calgary is determined to find out more about the ancient site. History is hidden right under the soil, just feet away from where people walk their dogs and go jogging. Right now, researchers think the stone circle is a remnant of a Blackfoot camp. Centuries ago, a lodge would have stood here. There wouldn't have been any joggers, but likely a small settlement of semi-nomadic indigenous people. And it wasn't the only one in the park. Lindsay Amundsen Meyer from the University of Calgary said there are about 12 stone circles in the area. Unfortunately, not much remains of the stone circles except for a few stubby rocks sticking out of the grass, and the history behind them is largely forgotten. The team of scientists have found some artifacts, mostly scraps from stone tools, some seashells, and materials for making beads and decorations. Nobody knows how old anything at the site is, though it could be seriously ancient. For comparison, the nearby Hawkwood site has revealed evidence of activity from between 8,250 and 500 years ago. That should give you a small idea of how long the Blackfoot people and their ancestors used this land before it was taken from them. The oldest forest in the world. If you had to guess where you thought the oldest forest in the world is, where would you say? Maybe somewhere in the jungles of Southeast Asia? A hidden chunk of the Amazon? If you guessed either of those, you would be wrong. The world's oldest forest is only a 2-hour drive from one of the loudest and most rambunctious cities in the world, New York City. The oldest known forest in the world was found at the bottom of a quarry in Cairo, New York, not far from the Catskill Mountains. Scientists have known about the ancient forest for a long time, but they never knew precisely how old it was. Not until recently. Now, a study headed by Christopher Berry at Cardiff University has shocked everyone. Christopher told the BBC that the forest is older than the Amazon. It dates to prehistory and would have originally been spread across New York all the way to Pennsylvania. The root systems have been dated to 385 million years ago. To give you a frame of reference, the oldest dinosaur ever found is from 228 million years ago. The ancient forests didn't look much different than a modern forest. Scientists identified a species of tree known as Archaeopteris, with huge wooden roots and healthy green branches full of leaves. It reproduces by spreading spores, just like fungi. Modern trees release seeds that grow into other trees, but the ancient trees released spores, which were then carried by the wind. Researchers also identified ferns. So basically, the oldest known forest was a bunch of big trees and bushy ferns. Glorious Roman armor. You've seen it in movies and you've seen it on TV. Russell Crowe wore it in the movie Gladiator. There is nothing quite as awe-inspiring as Roman armor shining in the sun, clinging to the back of a legionnaire. But Roman armor isn't just lying around anymore. Finding real Roman armor is next to impossible. But the impossible was made possible in 2020. Archaeologists found the only surviving Iorica squamata armor ever at the site of Satala in Turkey. It's a unique piece of history and a priceless artifact. This is a real suit of armor that was worn by a Roman soldier in a legion almost 2,000 years ago. They call it scale armor because it looks like dragon scales. It was most popular with high-ranking officers during the 1st and 2nd century AD. The unearthed armor is in miraculous condition for its age. After removing a bit of mud, giving it a light washing, and doing a bit of restoration, the armor has been restored to almost perfect original form. I made it sound easy, but this was a tall order. Experts at the Erzurum Regional Restoration and Conservation Laboratory had to digitally remove the grime using X-ray and tomography scans. Then, each plate of armor was cataloged, conserved, and restored. One by one, the armor was stitched back together on a mannequin. After 3 long years of hard work, the armor is ready to be used in battle once again. Just imagine the looks on your neighbors' faces when you march out the front door dressed in real Roman armor. As cool as that would be, good luck getting your hands on this artifact. Historians have traced the armor to a soldier in the 15th Legion right before Rome fell. In 476 AD, the final Roman emperor was deposed. Romulus Augustulus was kicked off the throne by German chieftain Odoacer. Rome was defeated and would never recover. Although we've been calling it a suit of armor, what was found in Turkey is technically the segmented cuirass. It's the part that goes over the torso, constructed from horizontal metal bands attached with leather straps. The armor offered a great degree of protection from slashes to the chest, while allowing soldiers to move more freely. The real Atlantis. Once again, Atlantis may have been found, or at least a version of it. Researchers have found something so mind-blowing it could make even Plato raise an eyebrow. Scientists from India's National Institute of Ocean Technology stumbled upon the remnants of an ancient city submerged in the Arabian Sea, just off the west coast of India. And get this, this city isn't your run-of-the-mill underwater rubble. Scientists found intricate architecture, roads, drainage systems, and artifacts that potentially prove the city was far, far ahead of the curve. So far ahead, it couldn't even see the curve. The ruins actually match descriptions of Dwarka, a city mentioned in Hindu texts as a thriving hub of culture and trade. Carbon dating suggests the sunken city might be older than the Indus Valley, Mesopotamia, and ancient Egypt. If this place really is the lost city of Dwarka, it could prove to be the oldest sophisticated city in the world. But then, who built it? Some believe Pandora's box has just been opened, and this underwater metropolis is in fact the real-life Atlantis. Dwarka and Atlantis, both of them ancient myths, could be one and the same. You've probably heard about Atlantis before. You know the story of Atlantis. Ancient Greek philosopher Plato described it in his work as a powerful, tech-savvy island nation that ultimately got too big for its britches. Greed, corruption, and ambition led to their downfall, and the whole place was swallowed by the sea in a single dramatic day. This newly found city, complete with road grids, towering ruins, and sewage systems, makes you wonder, was Plato onto something, or was he just repeating ancient stories? Maybe both. The underwater marvel was found accidentally during a routine pollution study in the Gulf of Cambay. Scientists were scanning the seabed when sonar picked up geometric patterns. You know, the kinds of patterns that don't just happen naturally. Soon after, submersibles confirmed the existence of walls, rectangular sections, and entire layouts of what could only be a human settlement. The scale of this city is jaw-dropping. It's over 5 miles long, 3 miles wide, and submerged 126 feet underwater. And now for the big reveal. The sunken city appears to be roughly 9,500 years old, making it twice as ancient as Mesopotamia. Tell me you're not on the edge of your seat in amazement. There have even been artifacts found to confirm the city is legitimate. Underwater archaeologists and researchers have found pottery shards, hearths, and tools, everything a thriving civilization needs. If this is Dwarka, what other stories from ancient texts might actually be true? The city's coastal location also hints at its role as a major trading center. Picture bustling markets, exotic goods, and ancient trade deals. Never before has an advanced city been found from almost 10,000 years ago. Dwarka, or the new Atlantis, whatever you want to call it, should be on the front page of the news. Sadly, the experts are locked in a heated debate, and all scientific investigations seem to have halted. The dating just doesn't make sense to some people. How could this place possibly be 10,000 years old? Controversial author and researcher Graham Hancock believes that the structures are evidence of a lost advanced civilization that predates the last ice age. He says that we need to change the timeline for the development of complex societies. Other researchers believe that this city could be much more recent. The question remains, how many undiscovered civilizations are lost beneath the sea? Who built Japan's sunken pyramids? It's time for one of the ocean's juiciest mysteries. It's a mystery so profound, so divisive, and so extremely controversial that most archaeologists and historians would rather not discuss it at all. The story starts in 1986. Local Japanese diver Kihachiro Aratake was out looking for hammerhead sharks off Japan's Yonaguni Island. Instead, he stumbled upon what looked like ancient ruins underwater. According to what Kihachiro told BBC Global, he was so disturbed by what he found that he kept it a secret. Come on, man, you can't keep a secret like this to yourself. Kihachiro did finally divulge what he found, but it was so outrageous that most people didn't believe him. Maybe that's why he kept silent in the first place. Kihachiro said he discovered a series of gargantuan, pyramid-like structures connected by roads. He saw what resembled a castle. He saw temples, arches, and even a stadium. It was enough to convince Kihachiro that he was on the frontier of a lost world, one hidden beneath the waves. Naturally, the outside world was skeptical. They didn't accept that there could be pyramids on the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Japan. Even today, the strange formations cause heated debates. Are they man-made? Are they natural? Are they the ruins of a 10,000-year-old civilization that ghosted humanity? Thankfully, other scientists were at least intrigued enough to investigate for themselves. Enter marine biologist Masaki Kimura. Kimura told National Geographic in 2007 that Kihachiro was right. The largest pyramid Masaki saw near Yonaguni Island rose a whopping 82 feet below the surface. He called it monolithic, complicated, and huge. But the excitement doesn't end there. Do you know what else Masaki saw while diving at the site? Animal carvings. Believe it or not, Masaki said he saw carvings of animals on the stone blocks of the sunken pyramids. If true, that would be irrefutable proof that human beings had something to do with their construction. That would be a game changer. What else could explain that? Kenzo Watanabe, another diver, agreed that there is no way the Yonaguni monuments are natural. When you see them with your own eyes, you just know. It's overwhelmingly obvious that the flat surfaces, spiraling steps, and symmetrical shapes are too perfect to be natural. Many explorers, adventurers, and scientists are convinced that the underwater ruins near the island were crafted by human hands. But whose hands exactly? One potential explanation involves one of Japan's most ancient cultures, the Jomon people. They lived on Yonaguni Island as far back as 12,000 BC. There were still a couple of mammoths kicking around back then. But the Jomon didn't have any fancy tools. They didn't have laser cutters or even metal knives. They were a stone's throw away from being cave people living alongside Neanderthals. So how could they have carved pyramids from solid stone? Not everyone's on the same page. Boston University professor Robert Schoch gave the ultimate party pooper take. He said every last monument is normal geology. He explained that sandstone breaks along straight plains, especially in earthquake-prone areas. The pyramids are just ordinary rocks. Ouch. Schoch is a real bummer, but he could be right. Without more information and without serious funding and a high-tech investigation, we may never know the truth. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to TKPA Warrior and Gerald Miller for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about underwater mysteries. We have a lot. There is a secret ocean in the Earth. Hold on to your hats because it turns out the Earth is hiding a massive secret from us. If you thought the oceans of the world were big when you woke up this morning, you'll be going to sleep with a whole different view of the world. Deep beneath our feet, about 400 miles down, scientists have discovered a water reservoir 3 times the volume of all the oceans combined. It makes the Mediterranean Sea look like a puddle. This colossal reservoir isn't sloshing around like your typical ocean. Rather, it's locked inside a type of blue rock called ringwoodite, found in the Earth's mantle. The mantle is the fiery layer between the crust and the core. You can think of it like water trapped in a sponge, except the sponge is a giant slab of rock being squeezed by Earth's pressure. All of this is happening way, way below the lowest point of the Mariana Trench. It's amazing scientists even found this secret ocean. Stephen Jacobson, a researcher at Northwestern University, led the charge on this mind-blowing discovery. His team's research not only reshapes our understanding of Earth's water, but also hints at how our oceans might have formed. Did you know one of the most popular theories for how water came to Earth is that it fell from space? Many scientists believe that comets delivered water to our home planet like interstellar pizza. That means when you go swimming, you are swimming in space goo. Not really, but you're welcome for the image. The discovery of this secret world of water has brought about an entirely new theory. Now, scientists think that Earth's water may not have come from space at all. It may have oozed out from the planet's depths. If you're wondering how scientists can spot water hundreds of miles below the surface, let me introduce you to Stephen Jacobson's seismic squad, armed with 2,000 seismometers. They use their instruments to study waves generated by over 500 earthquakes. It's like listening to Earth's internal drumbeats or heartbeats. These waves slowed down in certain areas, which was a big red flag for soggy rock. Jacobson's lab experiments confirmed the theory. Under the intense heat and pressure of the mantle's transition zone, ringwoodite sweats water. The bottom line is that waves created by earthquakes prove to scientists that the Earth is perspiring deep inside the mantle like hot yoga on a Tuesday. It's not just interesting, it is key to understanding our world. Without this secret ocean, scientists think the Earth would have turned into Waterworld, minus Kevin Costner. The secondary layer of water is likely helping to keep the oceans at the surface the perfect size. Otherwise, there would be no land at all, except maybe the tip of Mount Everest sticking out above the waves as the loneliest island in the universe. 18th century slave ship. A terrifying piece of history has been found off the coast of Mozambique. I warn you that the following story may be difficult to hear. It involves history, humanity, and true evil. A group of maritime archaeologists armed with scuba gear and sheer determination recently set out to uncover the sunken truths of the past. Among them was Celso Simbine, a Mozambican lecturer and budding maritime archaeologist. It wasn't long ago that Celso couldn't even swim, but that didn't stop him from diving down to the wreckage of l'Aurore, an 18th century French slave ship. In 1789, l'Aurore left Mauritius to pick up enslaved people from Mozambique, destined for the French Caribbean. But what happened next is a story of rebellion. As enslaved men and women and children were forced on board, a mutiny broke out. These people were not going to go quietly. They knew exactly what was going to happen to them, and for many, death was preferable to slavery. Tragically, the rebellion was quashed. More than 300 people, though they fought very hard, were overpowered and kept on the ship to be sent to the Caribbean as slaves. 4 of them drowned in the fighting. Those 4 deaths were a warning of something even more terrible to come. Because of the rebellion, the crew locked the enslaved people below deck. Then they had to stay down there for a month in horrible conditions. Now we get frustrated when our plane gets delayed for an hour and we're sitting on the runway. Imagine being trapped in the bowels of a stinky old boat for 30 days, waiting to be sent to a fate some would say is worse than death. And things got worse for the enslaved men. When the ship was finally ready to go, it was hit by a storm. The crew refused to open the lower deck until it became clear the vessel was going to sink. When they opened the hatch, all 331 people inside were already dead. If chills just ran down your arms, that's a perfectly normal reaction to hearing something so inhuman and tragic. Steve Lubkeman, an American marine archaeologist, said, "It's murder. There's no other way to put it. No sugarcoating here, just the raw truth." The wreckage of l'Aurore is a historical goldmine for researchers. It's not only a testament to the resilience of those who were wrongfully killed, it's also a well-preserved time capsule. As the team of researchers carefully brush away the sand to reveal the ship's structure, they uncover more than wood and nails. They are uncovering a story of resistance. The divers are trying to reclaim the history of trafficked and enslaved Africans, one sunken ship at a time. Carvings on underwater ruins. At the bottom of one of China's most mystifying lakes lies a fantasy city, like something out of a Disney movie that's been drowned and forgotten for centuries. Fuxian Lake can be found in Yunnan province. Its surface is crystal clear and placid, and underneath is a sprawling collection of stone ruins, complete with intricate carvings, pyramids, and plenty of unanswered questions. This underwater mystery started in 2006, when archaeologists discovered the remains of what seemed to be a massive ancient city at the bottom of the lake, covering an enormous area of about 10.8 million square feet. For context, that's bigger than the capital of the Han Dynasty that ruled China from 206 BC to 220 AD. It's like finding a sunken ruin in Lake Michigan bigger than Washington, D.C. The reason the discovery was such a big mystery is that nowhere in China's historical records is there a single mention of a city of this size in the area. There's nada, zilch. This sunken city shouldn't even exist. The theories started to fly. Some claimed it was the lost city of Yuyuan, said to have vanished into the lake during the Sui and Tang dynasties. Others thought it was the capital of the ancient Dian kingdom. Both were good guesses, but then archaeologists made a breakthrough. They realized that the ruins were made of stone, while Yuyuan and Dian were largely built from wood and clay. So they were back to square one. A megalithic city built of stone without any records to support its existence. And to make matters more bizarre, researchers found a pyramid so impressive it would make the pharaohs jealous. Unlike the Egyptian pyramids, this one is adorned with carvings and designs that suggest a level of artistry way ahead of its time. Who was building pyramids in China thousands of years ago? Archaeologists can't explain the unusual sun-like symbols they found carved on sunken stones. They think the suns could date to 1800 years ago. There have been somewhat similar designs found from China's spring and autumn period, between 722 and 481 BC. The carvings don't stop at suns, though. There are also mask-like faces with flat cheeks and teeth that look more alien than human. It's as if someone left an ancient emoji set for archaeologists to decode. Unfortunately, no one has managed to crack the code yet, so the true meaning of the symbols remains a mystery. There is also a legend to take into consideration. Remember Yuyuan, the city that some believe it to be, but it's made of wood and clay? Locals tell tales of the mythical city of Yuyuan. They say that it sank mysteriously, along with its whole population, into the depths of Fuxian Lake, never to be seen again. It's the Chinese version of the Atlantis myth. While it might sound like folklore, the ruins below the water are very real. The sonar surveys, carvings, and stone structures are all proof of a once thriving city that has baffled experts for years. Secrets of Sunken Egypt. A sunken temple full of pharaoh ghosts and ancient vibes has been found bursting with treasures and secrets. It's chilling in the Mediterranean right now. The underwater marvel was recently uncovered off the coast of Alexandria. See, this is why I wish I'd become a marine archaeologist. But hey, maybe it's not too late, right? Sadly, it all came crashing down quite literally in the 2nd century BC, when a cataclysmic earthquake rocked the surface of the planet. Tidal waves crashed against the shores, causing the land to liquefy and sink into the Nile Delta. This is why you don't build your temples on the coastline. Land liquefaction is the real deal. It wasn't just the temple that sank either. The whole thriving court of Ptonis Heraklion was sucked underwater and is currently about 4.3 miles off Egypt's northern coast. But thanks to the hard work of underwater archaeologists from the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, this sunken city is finally giving up its secrets. Inside the temple, archaeologists uncovered a treasure chest of ancient artifacts. Think silver ritual instruments, gold jewelry, and alabaster jars that once held perfumes. Frank Gaudio, the French underwater archaeologist leading the excavation, put it best. He expressed how extremely moving it is to discover such delicate objects, which survived intact despite the violence and magnitude of the cataclysm. It's not just the treasure that's impressive. The team also found wooden posts and beams from 5th century BC underground structures, still standing tall despite spending centuries underwater. They just don't make things like they used to, right? But wait, there's more. Make way, because the goddess of love has just arrived to the party. East of the Temple of Amun, archaeologists discovered a Greek sanctuary dedicated to the most illustrious of all the goddesses, the lovely Aphrodite. Even in ancient Egypt, people knew how to mix divine business with pleasure. Aphrodite's sanctuary held imported bronze and ceramic artifacts, along with a stash of Greek weapons. How would you like to get your hands on some of those for your next LARPing session? These items suggest the Greek mercenaries might have once been stationed here, possibly guarding the Canopic branch of the Nile, which was an important access point to the kingdom. Archaeologists explain that Aphrodite's temple shows us that the Greeks, who were allowed to trade and settle in the city during the era of the Scythian dynasty, had their own sanctuaries to their own gods. Basically, it's proof that ancient Egypt was a cultural melting pot with many different gods and religions. This underwater thing is the biggest ever. I want you to picture the largest deep-sea creature you can think of. Is it a giant squid? Something prehistoric? Whatever it might be, I guarantee it's not the real McCoy. In the stunning waters of the South Pacific, there looms an underwater structure. It looks like a cathedral. In reality, it's a coral colony so massive it feels like nature's version of Notre Dame. Can you imagine the scale? And it's alive! This isn't your average coral by a mile. It's the largest known coral colony in any ocean anywhere, probably in the whole universe. You can see it for yourself in the Solomon Islands. And get this, the living coral has been hanging out there for 300 years. That makes it older than the United States, Beethoven's symphonies, and Napoleon himself. Scientific name Pavona clavus, this colossal coral measures 111 feet wide, 104 feet long, and almost 20 feet tall. To put that into perspective, it's about 40 feet larger than the previous record holder in American Samoa. Imagine trying to wrap your arms around this thing. You need a few hundred friends just to give it a hug. What's even more amazing is that this gigantic life form was found accidentally during a National Geographic Pristine Seas expedition. The coral was initially mistaken for part of a shipwreck site. Videographer Manu San Felix and his team were stunned when they realized they had stumbled upon something far more extraordinary. San Felix said it is awe-inspiring to witness something so massive and ancient, but it is a bit of a trick. The coral is huge, yes, but it's not exactly an animal in the sense that a whale or a chipmunk is an animal. The coral is a single organism, but it's made up of millions of hard-working polyps. The polyps are like tiny construction workers building an empire beneath the waves. They are a living thing at the same time as being a single structure. They are like a city that's alive. It's one of Mother Nature's most spectacular creations. The oceans have been going through a lot lately, and coral is really suffering. But somehow, this behemoth has stood the test of time, weathering centuries of environmental changes as an underwater survivor. So what's Pavona clavus' secret? Why does it thrive while places like the Great Barrier Reef are getting destroyed? Location, location, location. Scientists believe its home in the cooler, deeper waters of the Solomon Islands might have shielded it from the worst effects of heat stress. This discovery is a beacon of hope, a living lesson in resilience that could guide future conservation efforts. It's not too late for coral to make a comeback. A lost Roman treasure. Forget everything you thought you knew about beach vacations. The glittering Adriatic coast of Slovenia is where sun-soaked beaches hide a secret beneath the waves. Clean out your snorkel because I'm taking you to an underwater harbor that hasn't been seen in around 2,000 years. Archaeologists from the Institute of Underwater Archaeology uncovered the submerged remains of an ancient Roman harbor near Porto Rosso, or as the Italians call it, the Port of Rose. Porto Rosso wasn't always a beach town with fancy yachts and dreamy sunsets. Well, maybe the sunsets. Going back to prehistoric times, it was home to Illyrian settlements. Then came the Celts until the Romans showed up around 178 BC and said, as always, this place is ours now. The Romans did that quite a lot. The Byzantine Empire later took a shine to the Adriatic coast too, leaving its cultural fingerprints all over the region, including the neighboring town of Piran. What I'm trying to get at is that Porto Rosso has layers of history, kind of like a really tasty lasagna. Thousands of years of different cultures dominating the city have left a layer cake of archaeological evidence. In 1998, archaeologists stumbled upon the remains of a Roman settlement and a farm near a modern-day gas station. Where people now fill up their cars with gas, the Romans were probably debating which olive oil was best. Then, in 2004, another find popped up. Researchers identified the foundations of a Roman-era fish farm, complete with ancient pools and salt warehouses. Even in ancient times, seafood was life. Those discoveries are all in the past. This latest find really takes the cake. Divers exploring the seabed near Bernardino Beach found evidence of a harbor. Evidence as in masts, wooden stakes, and ceramic fragments. They confirmed one mast to be made of fir wood and another from spruce. It seems that the Romans weren't too picky on where they got their material. All the finds prove that this was a bustling port. If you're thinking, okay, they found a couple old ship masts, so what? I get it. A few soggy pieces of wood don't exactly stack up to the discovery of something like a pyramid that no one has seen in 5,000 years. But these masts are extremely rare, which is what the fuss is all about. Most of what historians know about Roman sails and masts and ships comes from reliefs, mosaics, and coins. Real-world artifacts are practically unheard of. These relics could give scientists enough information to recreate a real Roman-era ship. And don't we all secretly want our own Roman merchant vessel? In the meantime, the wooden artifacts taken from the bottom of the sea will be preserved with a special melamine resin at a restoration facility. So, hopefully, we will get a real replica of a Roman ship pretty soon. The Temple Garden, Underwater Edition. How do you feel about a little underwater enlightenment? Serenity meets scuba at Bali's sunken Temple Garden. It's the Atlantis of the East, but the mystery isn't exactly thousands of years old. The underwater Temple Garden in Pemuteran Bay isn't the mythical Atlantis, but it's still an incredible sight to behold, and it has a cool backstory. Rather than being built in 2000 BC, this place was built around 2000 AD, as in about 20 years ago. It was the brainchild of two guys, Chris Brown, an Australian who's been living in the area for years, and his friend Paul Turley from Britain. These two diving enthusiasts dreamed of creating an underwater marvel. And they would have done it sooner if not for one big roadblock, one I'm sure we can all relate to: money. Enter the Bali Rehabilitation Fund. With their support, Chris and Paul launched the Reef Gardeners Project, a program that not only funded the temple, but also gave unemployed local fishermen jobs maintaining coral reefs. Even without being from Bali, Chris and Paul built the temple with traditional Balinese architecture. They included a collection of sandstone statues, including Hindu deities, turtles, and of course, Buddha himself. Transporting these full-size structures to the seabed took a team of divers who probably deserve a medal. You can't go diving in the lost city of Dwarka, and you can't dive in Atlantis because no one knows where it is. But you can visit the Temple Garden, and it's pretty dang close to visiting something like Atlantis. There's a deep section 100 feet down and a shallower area at only 50 feet for those who are a little more chicken, like me. Plus, the Temple Garden is like teleporting into Finding Nemo. Over time, coral colonized the statues, creating a colorful underwater ecosystem. Tiny fish flit around the temple like it's a sacred marine hangout. There was a little bit of drama here in 2010. A photo of the temple circulated online, and the internet did what it does best: overreact. Rumors flew about an ancient underwater archaeological site. Some people claimed there were 10 more temples like it between Bali and Java. But no, there's only this one temple, and I highly recommend fish lovers and history lovers brave its warm waters if you ever get the chance. Who wants to go? Atlantis Gold. This discovery from the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea might make you believe in Atlantis once and for all. Marine archaeologists found a Greek merchant vessel under about 20 feet of water off the coast of Sicily. The ship is known as the Gela II, dated to the 5th century BC. That makes it 2,500 years old. That's older than the Colosseum and the Great Wall of China. The Gela II isn't just any shipwreck. It's very well preserved, measuring about 45 feet long and 15 feet wide. Divers first discovered it in 1988 near the Tyrrhenian coast, and excavations began by 1995. Here's the kicker: the ancient boat was carrying orichalcum, a rare metal alloy straight out of Atlantis lore. Forget pirate treasure, this is real-life mythical bling. Ever heard of orichalcum before? It's also known as mountain copper, and is mentioned in ancient texts by Plato himself. You know, the same one who gave us the story of Atlantis. Plato hyped orichalcum as second only to gold in value. Plato also wrote that it was used to decorate the shiny buildings of Atlantis. Their palaces and fortresses were plated with pure orichalcum, which was nearly as fancy as gold. No one ever put much stock in these legends until a breakthrough discovery about 8 years ago. Divers found 86 ingots of this rare alloy in the wreckage of the Gila II. Finding these proves that this metal was a hot commodity in ancient times. Could this be evidence of trade between Atlantis and other civilizations? Sadly, the answer is no. There is no way to trace orichalcum back to Atlantis specifically. Even though it isn't indisputable proof, it does add credibility to Plato's original story though. The myth of Atlantis lives on. The treasure found in the Gila II doesn't stop at orichalcum. The shipwreck also held amphoras, those ancient pots, and Corinthian-style military helmets. These artifacts have now been brought to shore. Most recently, the team has been salvaging the timbers of the ship and taking them to the Bosco Littorio Archaeological Park. At a cost of about $1 million, the Gila II is being put back together again, like Humpty Dumpty.
Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and click that notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you next time. Bye!